Good morning. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I just wanted to thank all of you for joining us. I hope you are able to see us. I know that using this technology is kind of a new thing, and we're working through issues, and some of us, the internet might go in and out, things might freeze, but just be patient and bear with us. My name is Sharma Torrens. I am the Conservation Education Director with the Arizona Association of Conservation Districts, and I will call them AACD from now on. I'm going to throw a lot of acronyms at you, but I will spell it out in the beginning. So the Arizona Association of Conservation Districts, the AACD. So one thing, I wanted to thank all of our partners for making this workshop a reality. I wanted to thank Sharon Reed and the San Pedro Natural Resource Conservation District. So the Natural Resource Conservation District, which I will now call NRCD. We want to thank, the San Pedro NRCD for being a great partner on this, as well as the U.S. Department of Agriculture Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS, is another one of our great partners. So thank you to both of our great partners here. Today we have a good workshop. We're having a little issues. First on the agenda at 8 a.m. we were going to hear from Sharon Reed, the chair of the San Pedro Natural Resource Conservation District, NRCD. Unfortunately, she's having issues getting on, but if she is able to work out those audio issues, we will have her speak a little later. So yeah, we're going to hear from hopefully Sharon Reed when she gets on. I'll talk about the Arizona Association of Conservation Districts, the AACD, as well as the Natural Resource Conservation Districts, the NRCDs, and explain those a little bit. That'll be really brief. Then I will talk about NRCS, so U.S. Department of Agriculture, if you remember, the Natural Resources Conservation Service. I will talk about their Conservation Stewardship Program, or what we call CSP. See, there's a lot of acronyms coming your way today. We're also going to hear from Scott Stratten, who's the acting district conservationist for NRCS out of the Wilcox area. And then we are glad to be joined by Rudy Garcia, who's the regional soil health specialist for NRCS in New Mexico. And he is the soil health guru. So we're going to hear from him. So quickly, I'm just going to get started. First, let's go through some housekeeping while you're on, because again, I know technology, this is all different. Some of you aren't familiar with Zoom. I'm getting familiar. I'm not even that familiar. But we're all having to adapt to this because unfortunately we can't meet in person. And so, yeah, remember that, we're all going to make mistakes. Sometimes it'll take a while to show our PowerPoint. Sometimes things will freeze. We're slaves to the technology and the internet now, so we have to remember that. I wanted to let everybody know I'm going to have everyone on mute, so we won't be able to hear you. You can either, so if you go down to the bottom of your screen, if you click the mouse down there, there's a black bar that comes across the bottom of the screen, and that's a menu. So that lets you do a lot of things, like you can do a chat. So that's a way you can reach all of us, is you hit chat. And once the chat box comes down or comes up, you go down at the bottom of the chat box and it'll say to, and you click on, to all panelists, to me, to any of the attendees. And so that's how you can say something if you want to be unmuted. Yeah, so I wanted you to be aware of all of that. Let's see, so if you have any questions during the presentations, and you're welcome to ask them during the presentations, please hit the chat button, because then I will be watching the chat button and we can kind of interject when the speakers are, talking and get your questions answered. So that's kind of a good way to do that. We are also recording this, so I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. We are doing that because we want to make sure we capture all these great speakers on this, and we also want to be able to show it to producers and any of the cooperators for the NRCDs later at a later time, and we will also put it on the AACD website. So just so you're aware of that. So again, yeah, just bear with us with some of the technology issues, but we're going to go ahead and get started. And I think we're still in, I think Sharon Reed might be on. Sharon, can you hear me?
I can. We're on my phone, so.
No, great. Sharon Reed is the chair of the San Pedro Natural Resource Conservation District. And Sharon, I'll let you welcome the attendees. Thank you for joining.
All righty. Well, technology is a wonderful thing when it works. And so we've been anxious to have Mr. Garcia give a presentation and be able to share that. And we hope we don't have anybody in our office at this time coming to view this, but we're very anxious to have this and be able to have it recorded so that we can have it available for everyone. So thank you to everyone for coming and doing these presentations, even through the technical difficulties. So thank you so much, Deb and Sharma and Brooke and everyone, and Mr. Garcia for the presentation.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And again, if anyone wants to speak during this, you know, hit that chat button down at the bottom menu and let me know. But thank you so much, Sharon and the San Pedro NRCD for your partnership and for helping us put this on. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go quickly through my presentations because I know we want to get to the main one. We want to hear from obviously Scott Stratten. He's got some good information about NRCS programs. We also want to hear from Rudy Garcia, so the soil health guru. Definitely want to hear from him as well. So let me go ahead and I am going to share the screen of my PowerPoint, and hopefully you will be able to see this. You can let me know if you can't see my PowerPoint. You should be able to see it at this point. If there's some reason someone can't see a PowerPoint coming up on the screen, please hit the chat button and let me know. And we'll go through this real quickly. So again, yeah, I'm Sharma Torrance, the Conservation Education Director for the Arizona Association of Conservation Districts, the AACD again. And I just want to tell you, so people say, well, what do you do? What does that mean? So basically my tasks are to help the NRCDs get grants and funding, to do public education and outreach, to work with our great partner, the U.S. Department of Agriculture Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS, and to help the NRCD education centers get their grants funding and do all that they need to do. But in just a minute, I'll go through these slides and I'll tell you all about the AACD and the NRCDs, because I find that a lot of people don't really know that. And hold on a moment, we're having issues. We're having technical issues. Here we go again. Okay, there we go. Technical issue resolved. Yay. Okay, so topics to be covered quickly. Again, I'm going to talk about the AACD and the NRCDs. And again, get used to all these acronyms because we're going to be going through them. Okay, so a lot of people say to me, well, what is the AACD? And people have heard about us and know we're around and maybe get the general gist of it, but I'd like to give a little more details about that. So basically the AACD is a 501c3 nonprofit organization owned and operated by the Arizona's NRCDs. And so we are the support system for them. And there's 42 of them. So 42 natural resource conservation districts around the state. And basically what they do is conserve agriculture and natural resources. Okay, and what I'd like to say to people is I think that the NRCDs is Arizona's best kept secret, because a lot of folks don't really know about them and know about the great work that they do. So as I mentioned, there's 42 NRCDs in the state, so it covers the whole state, and they work to conserve agriculture and natural resources. 32 of them are political subdivisions of the state, which is administered by the Arizona State Land Department, and 10 are tribal. So those 32 that's administered by the Arizona State Land Department, they are public bodies, and then the 10 are tribal, so 42 total. So each NRCD is governed by 5 to 7 elected or appointed supervisors, what we call supervisors, which basically they're farmers, ranchers, and other private landowners, and they're volunteering their time. These are non-paid positions, volunteering their time to conserve agriculture. But not only agriculture, they're also working to conserve the natural resources, wildlife habitat, wildlife migratory corridors, water, soil, etc. So all of that great stuff. Okay, so just to give you a minute about the history of the NRCDs. So we're going way back in time now. So in the 1930s, the Dust Bowl. So I don't know if any of you remember hearing about the Dust Bowl. Basically what it was is in the 1930s, there was so much erosion of the soil that the wind kicked up the dirt and the dust cloud reached the Capitol. And that's when the president and Congress started paying attention. It's President Roosevelt at the time. But so the Dust Bowl occurred, and then Congress then declared the conservation of water and soil a national priority. So that was basically in 1945, and with the Soil Conservation Act, or 1935, excuse me, with the Soil Conservation Act. And then the Soil Erosion Service, which is now the Natural Resources Conservation Service, was created in 1935 and moved to USDA. And then in 1941, the Arizona Natural Resource Conservation Districts were created. So see, this is going way back in time. So 1941. Okay, so again, yeah, the legislature authorized and established these NRCDs. A lot of other states did this as well, because remember, Congress was declaring the conservation of water, soil a national priority and encouraged states to do this. So all states actually did this. In 1941, a state soil conservation committee was created with the governor, water commissioner, state land commissioner, director of ag extension services. That was established in the same year as 1941. 1944, the Arizona Association of Conservation Districts was created. So again, we're here to help and support and promote the NRCDs. And then in 1941, a big National Association of Conservation Districts was established. Because again, I'm telling you, well, let me go back. So I'm telling you that there's approximately 3,000 of these conservation districts around the nation. So every state has them. They're called different things. Some states it's resource conservation districts. Some states it's just conservation districts. But again, yeah, all of the states have them, 3,000 around the nation. Okay, so again, yeah, I think that the NRCDs, a lot of folks don't know about them. They're Arizona's best kept secret. And as I just mentioned, there's 3,000 of these conservation districts around the country. And basically, and I'm going to keep emphasizing this, so it's basically farmers, ranchers, and other volunteers, remember those supervisors, but giving their time to conserve our water, soil, fish and wildlife habitat, our food supply, etc. They're doing some great work, and they're volunteering their time to do that. Okay, so to quickly go on, so how do they do this? So they work closely with federal, state, and local entities and other agencies to get conservation dollars. And then they work closely with all the private landowners in their district, which are called their cooperators, sort of like members. They work with them to get the conservation work on the ground. And so I mentioned earlier, as part of my task is to help the education centers. So the NRCDs also have education centers. And basically the way I stated is they're there to teach children to adults about the importance of agriculture and of conservation. So they're doing great work, and they're also teaching about things about best management practices and putting on workshops such as this. So doing some great work. Okay, conservation is a common goal. So NRCDs have the power to act as intermediaries to the federal agencies and other entities. And as I told you, they're bringing the conservation dollars to our state, working with all these entities. But what I think really makes them unique, and so remember, they're working to conserve agriculture and the natural resources, and they have an education center which does the great work about teaching the importance of agriculture and of conservation. But what I think really makes them unique is I think NRCDs have the ability to reach a broad audience. So they reach organizations that are focused on conservation, they reach organizations focused on agriculture. Sometimes they're not necessarily always working together, but they're able to appeal to both sides and to bring them together to facilitate the collaborations and find those common goals. Because again, they focus on the agriculture, or the conservation of the agriculture and wildlife habitat, water, soil, etc. The other thing that I think makes the NRCDs unique is I think that they have the ability to educate the public about the value of agriculture in general. I'm not going to give you my long drawn out story, but I am an example of this because I grew up thinking farmers and ranchers, I guess I viewed it very negatively. That the farming and ranching destroyed the environment, harmed other species, etc. And I didn't even know where my food came from. It was getting to know the Nrc Ds and the supervisors and seeing these folks volunteering their time to not only conserve those farmers and ranchers and our food supply, but our wildlife habitat, our migratory corridors, water, soil, etc. That I think has a very profound impact on people. So again, if people knew about the existence of them, I think this would have the impact. So I think that's what makes the NRCDs unique. And yeah, just a couple takeaways. So the NRCDs are the local hubs of conservation. They're there to conserve agriculture and natural resources. They bring a lot of conservation dollars to our state. Last year alone, they leveraged $42 million in conservation funds to our state. And again, I think they have the ability to change negative perceptions about agriculture. I'm there to try to educate the public about their existence because they don't know about them, and spread that conservation message as well. Okay, with that, I'm flashing up. I hope everybody can see the PowerPoint. I'm flashing my email address, my title, my phone number, and I'm going to say it verbally just in case you can't see the PowerPoint. So my email address is Sharma, S-H-A-R-M-A, period, T-O-R-R-E-N-S. So Sharma, period, Torrens, at aacd1944.com. And my phone number, if anyone ever needs to reach me, I love to talk, so please call 602-540-5331. Okay, so with that, I hope everybody could see again. So it should, we've got somebody else that joined, okay. Anyway, okay, working through these technology issues, as I told you, this is gonna be a fun part of the process. Okay, so I talked about the AACD and the NRCDs a little bit. So now what I'd like to do is I'm going to share my screen and talk about NRCS's Conservation Stewardship Program. And I hope you all can see this screen. And please, if you can't see my PowerPoint, or if you have any questions, I'm going to emphasize again, if you put the mouse at the lower part of your screen, a little black box runs along the edge of the screen or the bottom of the screen. You can hit the chat button, or you can also raise your hand down here, and you can also hit the Q&A. So please remember that. So if you can't see something, if you have questions in the middle of this, please feel free to chime in. Okay, so again, as I told you in the beginning, so the U.S. Department of Agriculture Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS, is also one of our great partners. And the AACD is working with them to help them spread the word about their conservation stewardship program. It's a great program. It's underutilized in Arizona. And it's great for producers to allow them to do a lot of what they are doing and want to do on their farm and ranch. Okay, so I'm going to go through this quickly. Let's see if we can get this to move. All right, we're having there we go. It's just taking a little bit. I guess we have to be patient with this too. Okay, so presentation topics for the Conservation Stewardship Program, and I'm going to call it CSP from here on out. So here goes another acronym. So I'm going to talk about the origination, the purpose, the basics, the eligibility, the payments, the other terms, the 2018 Farm Bill. I'm not going to hand out surveys, but I will talk about the surveys. And then I'll talk about application deadlines and next steps. Okay, so the Conservation Stewardship Program, CSP, established in the 2002 Farm Bill, reauthorized and modified by subsequent farm bills. In 2015, NRCS reinvented it to increase transparency, flexibility, etc. Okay, and again, if anybody has any questions in between, try to go down to the bottom of the screen with your mouse, pull up that black box and hit chat or Q&A, Or there's a way to raise your hand down there too, and I will see it. I'll be paying attention. Okay, see CSP, the purpose. So it's basically to encourage producers to address priority resource concerns and improve their conservation performance by installing, adopting, and conservation activities, and improving, maintaining, and managing existing conservation activities. So that's the purpose of it. So basically, the basics, what it is. So it's a 5-year contract. It's money and technical assistance to eligible producers. But we're also going to talk, so pay attention. So as I told you, Arizona, this is underutilized, but there's been some changes in the Farm Bill. So now it's very appealing to those in the West because it's made things apply to us out here and you all, the producers. So the activities are basically enhancements. So they call them enhancements, and they're conservation activities to enhance your current conservation efforts, right? So enhancements for your current conservation efforts. Okay, so CSP, so who's eligible? So here we go. So there's 3 determinations that NRCS must make before NRCS will consider someone eligible. So applicant eligibility, land eligibility, and stewardship threshold eligibility. Gosh, say that 3 times fast. That's difficult. Okay, so let's go through each individually. Applicant eligibility. Producers with effective control of the land. So effective control of the land. So this is one of the changes in the 2018 Farm Bill. So you no longer need to be the operator of record. So this applies to tenants, lessees, etc. So producers with effective control of the land. So that makes you eligible. So that's one exciting change. Land eligibility. So it's private or tribal land, which ag commodities includes livestock, forest-related products are produced. So ag commodities, livestock, or forest-related products are produced, okay? And this is another change from the 2018 Farm Bill. So associated lands are eligible as well. So look at my underlined portion. Hopefully you can see this PowerPoint. It includes public lands, right? So I told you I was trying to make it more enticing to those out here in the West. So it includes a public land. We know a lot of the ranchers are leasing public lands, and before those weren't eligible. Now those are opened up. And look what it says. So public land, when associated with other eligible lands, so associated with your private land, which is under the effective control. See, there you go. We know you're leasing a lot of the public land, but it's under your effective control of the applicant, and which is a working component of the producer's ag operation. Okay, so stewardship threshold eligibility. So basically that's the level of management required to conserve and improve quality of the natural resources. And it's at the time of the contract offer, you meet or exceed for at least 2 priority concerns, and you would meet or exceed for 1 additional by the end of the contract. And that's basically, you go through a consultation process with NRCS and they look at the enhancements, what your priority concerns are, what you could be doing on your land. Okay, so renewal eligibility. So this, I don't know if this applies to our folks attending today, but those that have already gone through CSP and are looking to renew, it's by the end of the renewal contract period. So remember, it's a 5-year contract. And so you meet or exceed stewardship threshold of 2 additional priority concerns on the ag operation. So that's to renew. You implement new or improve existing activities to achieve higher levels of conservation performance for a minimum of 2 priority resource concerns met or exceeded in the initial contract, okay? So that's all renewal. And again, I don't know if that applies to anyone that's attending our workshop today. So the payment, so this is what everybody asked about. So the payment, it's annual after October 1st. Don't know why I was going to say December there. October 1st. The payment is to maintain the existing activity, to implement additional activities, and for adopting 1 or 2 systems. So resource conserving crop rotation, advanced grazing management. So these are some payment limitations. A person or entity can't exceed 200,000, and a joint enterprise can't exceed 400,000. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an example too of some of these, because everybody, in concept, this sounds great, but everybody wants to really kind of hear how this plays. So after I talk about this farm bill, and we've gone through this as I've been going along through this PowerPoint, but after this, I'll give you a few examples. Okay, but looking at the 2018 Farm Bill. So CSP has been moved under the same chapter as EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. See, it's very similar. It's similar in a lot of ways. Existing contracts will continue under their previous authority. This is no longer an acre-based program. I believe it was $18 an acre, but it's no longer acre-based for the payment. Again, look at this, public land is eligible, trying to make it so us in the West can apply for this, or more like producers in the West. Shouldn't include myself in that. Remove the operator of record requirement. So remember, if you have effective control, so if you're a lessee, if you're a tenant, you are eligible, or you could be eligible if everything else applies. And renewals will now be competitive. So that's the 2018 Farm Bill. Okay, so let's move on to these examples. And then we're gonna move over to Scott Stratten, the acting district conservationist for Nrcs, and he's gonna talk about some other programs here. But okay, so here's a good example of the conservation stewardship program here in Arizona. So cropland, 290 acres. They agreed to do 3 enhancements. They're doing herbaceous weed treatment, reduced risk nutrient loss surface water by using precision ag technology, GPS basically, and controlled traffic to decrease compaction. The payment per year, $15,000. Okay, so that's a current example of cropland here in Arizona. Rangeland, let's go through this quickly. So 4,500 acres, so this is a ranch, 4,500 acres. They agreed to do 3 enhancements: prescribe grazing, maintain quantity and quality of forage for agriculture health, tree and shrub establishment. So they planted trees. So the payment for this, $24,500 a year. So that's a crop and ranch example. Okay, so remember I said I was going to talk about these surveys. So I like to hand out surveys at my in-person workshops. I know we're online, we got to adapt to this. I survey the attendees just to find out what they know about conservation stewardship program, if they see there's any obstacles to it, if they're interested, etc. I have some surveys, and I should have everyone's email address when you logged in. So I will email everyone a survey. I would really appreciate it if you fill that out and send it back. I will send it in a Word version so you can easily put an X by your selection and type in your name and easily just email it back to me. So I'd appreciate that. I will be sending that out after this workshop. Okay, and the survey, again, it's just going to provide us helpful information about any obstacles you view in Arizona. And again, remember, you could be a lessee, you just have to have effective control of the land now, that's the difference, and public land is eligible. Okay, so next steps, and we are at the end, we're going to be moving on. I'm glad you all kind of stayed with me on this, but we've got a June 1st deadline coming up. So if you're interested in applying this year, please reach out to me. Again, I will provide my email address at the end of this workshop. If you didn't get it in the beginning, please reach out to me. I can help you fill out an application. We'd like to see Arizona producers take advantage of this property. We'd like to see a lot more money coming out to our state. We don't want to see this continue to be underutilized, especially with these changes for public lands being eligible and having effective control of the land. So yeah, I will send out the email, and I've got, hopefully you can see my PowerPoint. I've got some places where you can see more information. You can contact Marcus Muniz. He's the acting assistant state con if you have even further questions. But I would say reach out to your local NRCS district conservationist or acting district conservationist, or you can reach out to me and I can put you in touch with them, or I could try to help you as much as I can with the application process. Okay, so with that said, I think we are going to move on. I'm going to stop sharing that screen. Okay, So we are going to move on and we are going to hear from Scott Stratten, who is the acting district conservationist for NRCS out of the Wilcox office, and he's here to talk about NRCS's other programs. Okay, Scott, I am unmuting you. I think you might need to unmute did you mute yourself, Scott? Hold on, everybody. Here we go. Sorry, Scott. Okay, there we go. Scott, you're on. And do you want to share your PowerPoint, or would you like me to?
I'm going to try to do it, Sharma. Thank you. Just bear with me, folks. Hopefully you can see that.
Scott, this is Sharma. We can't see it yet, but I think it's just going to take a few seconds.
Okay, so I'm Scott Stratten. I'm the acting district conservationist for Wilcox. Normally, I'm an area range specialist for the Wilcox, Safford, and Douglas offices. I work for the Tucson area office, actually. Sharma, if you could just holler at me when this is up.
Scott, I can't see it yet.
That's crazy. Okay, I'll give it a few more minutes. Sharma, thanks for talking about CSP. I think it's a real good program. I just echo your thoughts. We don't take advantage of it like we should in Arizona. And by all means, if you're interested, give us a call.
Scott, would you like me to try to, oh, hold on. It looks like yeah, we just got something from Sarah Lemon. Thank you for sending that chat. She said you may need to pick a different screen for sharing. Scott, we can actually see the list of your files, and it's got the AACD presentation highlighted. We just can't see the actual PowerPoint. Scott, you there?
I'm here.
Okay. So did you clicked on the AACD presentation?
I did.
I can pull it up on my screen. This is why you sent it to me, because we are trying to manage for all contingencies. Okay, so hold on, Scott. I can pull up. Let's see. Bear with us, everybody. We're going to try to get his PowerPoint on my screen so you all can see it. All right, Scott, and it's, hold on, let me maximize this. And I've only got a PDF format, but I think I'll be able to slide through this. Okay, Scott, I think we're on page 1. Do you see it?
Not yet. All I see, Sharma, is your my docs, your Dropbox.
That's it. Okay, hold on. Let me pull this up another way. Let's see. We've got Rudy's slide. Okay. Oops, you know what? Let's try this. I'm going to share my screen, and I think I've got it minimized at the bottom. So hold on a moment, Scott. We will try this. Hold on a moment. Wrong one. There's Rudy's. All right, we've got Rudy's for sure, but I know we have Scott's up here too. So let's see. Can you see that?
Yep, that's up. Cool.
Okay, good, good. Now I'm going to mute myself and you could just tell me when to go to the next slide.
Next slide, please.
Okay. Now I've got to figure out, okay, there we go.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about briefly EQIP, or the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and also RCPP, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. They're both pretty popular programs in Arizona, and I'm going to use a bunch of acronyms. If you have questions, again, down at the bottom, you can go to the chat and I'll slow down, or I'll explain what the acronym means. But EQIP, it's kind of our banner program in Arizona on cropland, pasture land, and rangeland. The goal is to help the producers address resource concerns and improve the quality of the resources. Next slide. The one common hang up that we have with our customers, and it's nothing against them, it's just the unfamiliarity with our programs, is you have to have a conservation plan put together so that then we can move on to farm bill programs. And the conservation plan is your plan as a producer. NRCS will help you develop it. At the end of the day, it's yours, your name's on it. And the plan should represent your objectives and your goals. And then we help you pick the programs to address the resource concerns that you would like to address. So there's no strong arming on the plan. And then what programs you pick to apply for, again, that's on the producer. Next slide. So like in Wilcox, we have 3 range cons and 1 soil conservationist, and we're there to help you develop your plan, get a contract going if you so desire, and again, just help you improve your operation. And it's free. Next slide, please. Eligibility. So FSA, which is right next door to our office in Wilcox, they do the eligibility determinations for us. I recommend you make an appointment with them and sit down, and they'll go through and make sure you as a producer is eligible for our programs, and also that your land is eligible for our programs. This slide is kind of, well, not kind of, it's slanted towards rangeland, but it's just an example of over 100 conservation practices that NRCS has through EQIP. I won't read to you, but there's, like I said, there's over 100. So next slide, please. NRCS takes applications year round. It doesn't matter. But we do have formal cutoff dates, and that's where we say, okay, out of all those applications, now let's go through and rank them and select those for funding. And right now, we're right there. We had a cutoff, and we are working on our rankings. Next slide, please. So those are the 5 steps to getting assistance through EQIP, and it's similar for our other programs. So right now, like I said, we're in between the eligibility determinations and the ranking, and hopefully in June we'll go to the 5th step, and that's where we'll fund applications and get those contracts obligated and moving towards getting conservation on the ground. Next slide, please. So this kind of blows up step 5 of the planning process, or not planning, but getting a contract funded. So your application, it's competitive. So if it's selected for funding, we'll give you standards and specifications for all of your practices, designs if needed. And then also in your contract is a schedule of the operations. This just spells out what practices are going to be completed when. Once the practices are installed, one field office reps will come out. And we also have area and state support staff, if it's a complex practice, come out and do a construction check, make sure the practice meets NRCS specs and standards, and then we go on with the cost share at that time. Next slide, please. So again, it's Environmental Quality Incentives Program, EQIP, rather than EQUIP. EQIP was first authorized in the 96 Farm Bill, and it's been reauthorized with some changes in each subsequent Farm Bill since. The 18 Farm Bill has some pretty cool changes. I'll go through those here in the next few slides, but veteran status is a new one. The organic incentive, the payment limitation has increased. There's some dollars set aside for wildlife habitat, so it's ear tagged for wildlife habitat. And then also irrigation districts are now eligible for EQIP. It's a pretty cool change. And then there's some incentive contracts that I don't know a whole lot about, that they're real new, and give me some time and maybe I'll know more about them down the road. Next slide, please. So here's just a snapshot of what the 18 Farm Bill funding for EQIP looks like. And as you can see, pretty substantial increases over the next 4 years. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that the veteran applicants are getting a new recognition. I think it's pretty cool. Both the veteran applicants and the historically underserved applicants are eligible for an increased payment rate, and also for advanced payments. And it's important to note what the Farm Bill defines a veteran farmer as, and it's basically you have to have been discharged in the most recent 10-year period. And veterans will receive preference in the beginning farmer rancher or socially disadvantaged farmer ranking pools. Veteran farmer ranchers may receive higher payment rates. They also are eligible to receive advanced payments. Next slide. So the advanced payment is something that NRCS, we have to notify our customers about, the historically underserved producers. Each producer that qualifies as historically underserved can elect for each practice whether they would like an advance payment or not. And a good example of advance payment would be a mile of fence. You know, a mile of fence costs $5,000 just for materials, and a historically underserved producer could get an advance payment to buy those materials, and then they have the material and they can get that fence built. Pretty attractive for some, much needed, so that they can get that conservation on the ground. Next slide, please. Payment limitations for the 2018 Farm Bill. It's $450,000, so for the life of that Farm Bill. If you happen to have some contracts with the prior Farm Bill, it's not cumulative with this Farm Bill. I mentioned earlier the National Organic Initiative. The payment limitation increased from 80,000 to 140. And then there at the bottom of this slide, it talks about there's a possibility that joint operations or group projects may double that individual contract payment limitation. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to steal Rudy's thunder, but also in this new farm bill is they expanding the conservation activity plans to include planning for soil health, some crop rotations, and precision management. Also some soil testing and remediation. Next slide, please. So I'm going to jump from EQIP into RCPP. Next slide. Okay, so this, I should have said this at the beginning. This PowerPoint I had help putting together for a presentation in February. So some of these slides are a few months outdated, but coming out of 2019, RCPP has been pretty successful, a popular program, as you can see the numbers there. Next slide. This is in central Arizona. There's a RCPP up there on the Verde River and the watershed above it. Pretty successful program there. Next slide. And again, this is, so if a few months ago, this is where we were at. In December, NRCS was accepting proposal submittals, and then they went to review, and the proposals were scored, and the state conservationist ranked them, and then makes recommendations on funding. And the awards were announced in late March. For Arizona, we funded, well, there's 3 RCPP proposals that were funded. A pretty substantial one on the Gila River Indian Reservation, helping them with lining irrigation canals. Another one in Pinal County, helping to improve irrigation efficiencies. As you may know, Pinal County is one of the areas that stands to lose some of their Salt River project water when it becomes necessary to reduce taking water out of the Colorado River. And the third one is a wildlife-based RCPP north of Prescott. Next slide. So this is what it looked like across the nation for 2019 RCPP proposals. One of the new changes in the Farm Bill was there was 3 funding pools and they went to 2. So now we have state, multi-state, and then the second one would be the CCA, and I'll explain that here in a minute. But so Arizona had 8 proposals. Next slide. RCPP is now standalone. Again, pretty substantial funding. Another acronym, AFAs, Alternative Funding Arrangements. There's opportunity, and I think it will just become more and more popular, but the AFAs is, depending on the strength of the partners, it's pretty much like a grant. So the partner handles all of it instead of regular RCPP, where NRCS develops, once the proposal's funded, NRCS develops the contracts with the customers within that RCPP, and then also manages the contracts. The AFAs, the partner would handle all of that. And I think I may repeat it several times this morning, but with RCPP, the partner has to show and report on the effectiveness of the outcomes with the natural resources. Next slide. So here's that, and you can go online and just Google RCPP, and it'll tell you about the CCAs, which are, for us, is the Colorado River CCA, and it lists on the left-hand side of that slide, it lists the priority resource concerns for the Colorado River CCA, excuse me. For the state and multi-state RCPP proposals for Arizona, on the right-hand side of the slide, it lists what our priorities are for that. Next slide. So RCPP, emphasis on what the impact of the proposal is going to, so what are we doing for the natural resources, and is immeasurable, so quantitative. And then partner contributions, what is the partners bringing to the table as far as money, in-kind contributions, federal funding, non-federal funding. And then it also emphasizes innovation. So what new technology, new ideas are we bringing to the table with this proposal? And then also emphasizes the strength of partnerships and the ability of partners to manage these projects. Next slide. Again, I won't read to you, but on the partner contributions, I think it's important to note NRCS's goal is that the partner contributions at least equal the NRCS investment to the project. And next slide, please. So again, we're looking for a 1-to-1 contribution ratio. Next slide, please. Again, we do accept RCPP applications all the time, but there's a formal proposal submitted date, deadline like I showed earlier. I expect fiscal year 2020 RCPP's proposals to look a lot similar to the slides I presented earlier. Next slide, please. And again, some of these dates are outdated, but again, just give you an idea of the timelines associated with RCPP. Next slide, please. Questions? Also, I have to show the next slide. Thank you, Sharma.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions for Scott? Remember, if you take the mouse, we've got some echo here. Let's see, hold on a moment. Okay. I think we still have a little bit of echo, but we'll work with it. Thank you, Scott Stratten. He's the Acting District Conservationist for the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS, one of our great partners and one of our great partners on this workshop. So thank you so much, Scott. If anyone has any questions, and I know some of you joined us late, so you take your mouse, again, working with this technology it's a lot of fun because we have issues, as I think everybody is, because we're adapting to this new situation where we can't meet in person. But anyways, if you take your mouse to the bottom of the screen, a black menu comes across the bottom. If you want to hit chat, and then at the bottom of the chat screen, it'll say to, and you can select to me, to all panelists, to all attendees. You could type in a question. I will be watching that, so if anybody has any questions, please let me know. And let's see, you can also, yeah, I mean, I think you can also raise your hand down here. But chat might be easier because it comes right up. So again, if you have any questions, hit chat. For those of you that joined us late, I'm Sharma Torrens, the Conservation Education Director for the Arizona Association of Conservation Districts, the AACD, and basically, yeah, we're here to support and promote the 42 natural resource conservation districts in our state. And the Nrc Ds, the Natural Resource Conservation Districts, are there to conserve agriculture and natural resources, and they do some great work. And San Pedro Natural Resource Conservation District is one of our great partners on this workshop, so thank you so much to them, as well as to NRCS and Scott. But now we are going to move on to Rudy Garcia, who is the Regional Soil Health Specialist. He's out in New Mexico. So I guess in a way we're a little lucky we have to do this online because it's easy for him to join online just with his computer instead of having to travel to Arizona. He is the soil health guru, and I want to mention one more thing is we are very lucky to have him because he is retiring after Friday, this Friday. So we are very lucky to have him and get him. And just another reminder too, for those of you that joined us late, we are recording this session. And so it's a good thing because the AACD will put it on our website. We will make this available for future showings. So that's a great thing. So Rudy, I'm gonna unmute you. You there, Rudy?
Okay. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, Rudy, we can't see you. Is the video on you?
It should be, but because we've been having connection problems, I can see you. Do you want to, before we go on, do you want to see if you can try to load up my presentation on your side since I was able to see the previous ones? If
Yes.
not, we'll just go with our previous plan.
Wait, hold on a moment. I'll share that. Oh. Let me share that. Okay, Rudy, if you get your video going, that's fine. If not, we can hear you.
Okay, so do you want me to just bring up the PowerPoint on my side and then we'll go from slide to slide?
I'm just going to share my screen and I will pull up your PowerPoint.
Okay.
Okay, so let me know, Rudy, you should be able to see this. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, it's on. We're on the first
Okay.
slide.
Just a quick reminder for everybody, if you have any questions throughout, because this is a nice detailed presentation. And so if you have any questions throughout, again, take your mouse down to the bottom of the screen. There's going to be a black menu that appears. Hit the chat button, and then you can put on the to line, have it come to me or all, but I will be paying attention and I will read the question to Rudy and interject. But if not, I won't say anything. So take it away, Rudy. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Sharma. Before we continue, in case we should have a disconnect and what have you, I might have to reconnect and what have you, so hopefully that doesn't happen, but if it does, just hold on for a minute while I re-sign. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so on this photo here, as you can see on the right-hand side, what you're seeing is a way of farming that incorporated all the biological principles, soil health principles, and this is one of many farms that I worked on, and it's basically almost identical to the kind of vegetable farm that I grew up near, south of Abiquiu, New Mexico. And anyways, as you can see, as you look at the photo, we're going to go through the soil health principles. If you look at that field that's in front of you, which is in the town of Sena, New Mexico, south of Santa Fe, southeast Santa Fe, you can see that when you look at the cropping systems there, where it says on the maximize biodiversity, you can see that there's all kinds of different crops planted on approximately 20 acres. And so one of the principles of soil health is to have as much biological diversity in plants because that's how you build soil health. Okay, the second principle is maximize living roots. So on the photo that you see there, you can see that you have all types of living roots during the summer, which is your cash crop. But after these crops are harvested, you then are able to plant a cool season multi-species cover crop, which would allow you to grow a cover crop into the fall, and part of the winter and in the spring. And so that's how you would be able to have living plants throughout the majority of the year. In the third principle, it says maximize soil cover. And this is all of these principles need to be working. But you can see as long as I have living plants and residues in different surface crop residues in different stages of decomposition, I am protecting the surface from the impact of the sun, hot temperatures, from evaporation, and we'll cover more of that. Okay, the next principle, it says minimize disturbance. So minimize disturbance is in terms of minimize disturbance would be like biological, is don't plant just one type of crop back to back. You got to have diversity in your crop rotation and in your cover crop so that you have a diversity of microorganisms constantly cycling nutrients, building aggregates, and sequestering carbon. And physical disturbances is that you do not want to cultivate absolutely no more than is necessary to prep your land and grow it, because cultivation in itself is very destructive on the biology. And then a chemical disturbance, as you can see this crop fields in front of you, which there are a number of, this is the way farming was done here in New Mexico for hundreds of years without any chemicals. When you have a very diverse cropping system, you will be able to wean off substantially from a lot of your fertilizers and pesticides and what have you, because the system is very efficient at cycling nutrients and having the right beneficials to control any kind of pest problems and disease. Okay, the other principle where it says adaptive grazing or applicable, on this photo here that you see in front of you, this field at the end of a growing your cash crop are able to be grazed with cows, sheep, or goats. In a very short time, they will process all those residues, and then you would be able to plant a cover crop. So you can see these are the soil health principles. And before we move on to our next slide, if you look at the left corner on some of your main practices that we've used, I'm going to cover like 14 different examples of folks using soil health systems in New Mexico and a couple in Arizona. You can see that our emphasis is on diverse crop rotations, diverse multi-species cover crops, grazing pastures using adaptive grazing, having orchards that are well managed, selecting the proper irrigation system, and having a strategy or management for nutrient and pest management, and moving to as much as you're able to a minimum till, no till. So before we go to the next slide, you can see that in the middle, you can see that basket, that cornucopia stuff. Our main emphasis is that using soil health allows us to produce nutrient-dense crops that are good for human health and also for the overall ecosystem. Okay, next slide. Okay, so let's get a basic definition that is used all over the world for soil health. So on the left-hand corner, it says soil health. And the definition, the continued capacity of the soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and humans. So that's the purpose of soil health. It's a living, breathing system. And the many things that we want soil to do is we want it to cycle nutrient, to have nutrient cycling very efficiently. We want it to be well aggregated so that it has a high infiltration and high water holding capacity. We want it to buffer the soil from any kind of products that we put on it, whether it be manure or any kind of residue of any chemical compound that we put on it. We want to be able to denature and to recycle anything in the soil. Of course, we want it to have a good stability, well aggregated soil so that it supports the roots. And very importantly, it's going to be the habitat for the enormous biodiversity that's in the soil. And before we go to the next slide, 90% of all the things that we want a soil to be done is done by the microbial activity. So this is the most important part of doing soil health, is that you're providing the optimal environment for microbes, the majority that you're not going to see with your eye. That's where the answer lies on this. And on the right side, it says the goal is to achieve optimal biological, physical, chemical, soil properties. And so the three rings there that you see where it says biology and physical and chemical basically say that the whole system is tightly connected in terms of an ecosystem, and soil health, the heart right in the middle, that's where you find the ideal point when you're managing soil health management systems, is you provided the optimized environment for microbes to do their job. Next slide. Okay, on this photo here where it says Soil Health Management System Guide for Implementing an Irrigated Vegetable Operation. This is a producer miner, Morgan, that I've known for about 20 years. At the bottom, you will see where you can click on this webinar that I helped a miner put together. It's a farm here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And when you click on that website, it's a 1-hour webinar where he goes step by step on how all the practices of cover crops, crop rotations, irrigation systems, irrigation management, nutrient management, compost. It covers the whole thing as to how he planned and implemented a soil health management system that mimics nature. So again, one of our best farmers here, and we've done many trainings with him and Matthew Draper, which is another farmer near him, a young farmer. But I wanted to have that website for those that are wondering, well, how does someone actually connect all the dots, and how do you actually do this? And before I go to the next slide, I want to point out that the first slide that I brought up of a farmer in Sena, New Mexico, that those farms there have been farmed for over 200 years, and in some places even more. And so this kind of farming practices that today we call soil health is not any kind of new science or what have you. This is the way many farmers farmed here in the Southwest, and I'm specifically referring from my experience of working with farmers in many communities along New Mexico, specifically in the northern part of the state in the different communities. So go ahead and next slide. Okay, so when you look at this chart here, it has NRCS conservation practices on the top. We've already covered this practices of cover crops, crop rotations, nutrient management, etc. And on the left-hand side, you will see soil health principles. So a soil health conservation plan, or better known as a soil health management system, is nothing more than a systems approach of the right combination of conservation practices that meet all the needs of the soil health principles that we talked about, such as minimize disturbance, maximize cover, maximize biodiversity, living roots, and grazing. So that's all we're talking about. We're talking about how do you properly plan your site-specific situation and incorporate the combination of practices so that all the soil health principles are covered. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. Okay, for irrigated systems that are flood irrigated systems where you're growing pastures, alfalfa, orchards, and what have you, or where you are growing crops using furrow irrigation, one of the requirements that we have with various folks we worked with is that you always want to begin with your fields being laser leveled before you make the transition into a soil health system, especially when it's for flood and furrow irrigation, because you got to be able to apply water very efficiently. The other irrigation systems that you see there, starting from the upper left-hand corner, you can see it says irrigation pipes. There's high flow turnouts, center pivots, subsurface drip, surface drip, micro sprinklers, and side rolls, concrete ditch, aluminum gated pipe, and there's still quite a few. In New Mexico for our irrigated cropping systems, we probably use every type of irrigation system that you can imagine. And so the point here is that there's always an optimal irrigation system that will fit your irrigation, soil, and water situation. So that requires planning, and so we do this soil health planning as an interdisciplinary approach, so where you bring in the right knowledge and expertise to plan the right system. Next slide. Okay, here's another photo where it's showing an irrigated pipe and valve. This is showing that before we, in this field, went into a soil health system, we first made sure we had the right laser level field, the right slope, and the right irrigation system so that we could properly apply the right amount of water with alfalfa irrigation pipelines. And also, if you look on the lower left-hand corner, you'll see an open drain. Many times when you're farming along a river system and you're near an open drain or a river, you have to be very sure that you apply water very efficiently, because you do not want to raise the water table or have a shallow water table, which would cause you aeration and drainage problems and salinity problems. So again, part of the overall journey of learning how to properly plan a system that fits your area. Next slide. And now I'm going to go through like 14 examples, and there's many more. Most of these are in New Mexico. And what you're seeing there is a farm in Nambe, New Mexico, where he farms basically throughout the year, growing cool season and warm season crops, planted into cover crops using surface drip irrigation, hoop houses, greenhouses, composting, and again, a very easy photo to see there the importance of having diversity in your crops, whether they be cool season and warm season, and also by planting them into a cover crop so that you're constantly building your soil health. Next slide. Okay, this is one of the largest pecan orchards in the United States. Part of it is in San Simon, Arizona, and it's managed by Brian Driscoll, which is the main farm manager. And And I met Brian about 10 years ago or so and doing a workshop in New Mexico, and I invited him over, and he has been able to incorporate cover crops, a mowing program, a proper irrigation and nutrient management program, using high quality compost, and he's been able to make a major transition on such a large operation using soil health principles. But again, my goal here is to show that regardless of the temperature, the soil type, the irrigation system, the water quality, or any variable, as long as you're using soil health principles, you're able to adjust any system to perform at a much higher level. Next slide. Okay, this is a farm there that a workshop that I had an opportunity of doing jointly with Dr. Russell Plumstead there from the University of Arizona, and then a really nice couple who really was doing this work. And I think I think it was Lisa Austin and her husband. But this is about a half an hour southwest of Phoenix, and it shows crops growing really well towards the end of November, and just an outstanding example in a very harsh environment in the Phoenix area, showing that using very minimal technology, a garden fork to fracture the soil, and it doesn't invert the soil, it just breaks it up, and then they top dress it with manure and compost, and then they use surface drip, and with very little investment are growing outstanding vegetable gardens. And I find this to be just one of the many examples how anyone, anywhere can implement soil health and do it and reap the many benefits that, especially now that we're having such an incredible crisis and issues in terms of food and all the issues that we're facing. So just an outstanding example there. Next slide. Okay, this is our largest vineyard in New Mexico near Northburg, and it's the Lescombs Vineyard, and they now have many years of fine-tuning their system and transitioning it into a soil health system for growing grapes for various very high-quality wines that they make. And as you can see, with trial and error, they've learned that the native grasses and using high-quality compost and all the prunings from the vineyard are shredded and are allowed to decompose in the center, and has allowed them to increase their yield and quality of grapes at a very high level. And this is just using some real simple tools, but the point here that I want to point out is that now we're on a vineyard on very sandy soils in a very hot environment, and the Lescombs are doing just an outstanding job of producing such high quality grapes for high quality wine, and just another example that soil health fits on any kind of cropping system. Next slide. Okay, this is a dairy south of Albuquerque, about half an hour, and this is my friend Mike DeSmet, and he has many years of transitioning his dairy to Corolla. Dairy cows only eat on living pastures of various cover crops, and they're rotated from pasture to pasture, and they're doing just an outstanding job. Probably one of the best examples that I've seen of anyone on the dairy business who has been able to transition to use soil health principles to produce high quality milk. And on the bottom, from visiting with him, his comment is healthy soils, healthy plants, healthy cows, and high quality dairy products. And you can see that this is another example of using a total different business or a cropping system for achieving the same result, using soil health principles to graze dairy cows to produce high quality products, and being very satisfied with how much his soil health is building. And just another example of soil health on various cropping systems. Next slide. Okay, last summer I got a chance to visit a friend of mine. He's a ecologist researcher in Taos. Taos, New Mexico has a very short growing season, and I was very impressed by the work that this ecologist professor is doing. Is that on her 1 acre of land, using greenhouse, hoop houses, high quality compost, is able to grow a garden where the water table is within 2 feet, and again showing that soil health can be applied on any scale, on any soil type, in an area with a very short growing season. So you use your understanding of plants, your growing season, your elevation, high elevation, and you improvise with technology. In this case, is using compost, hoop houses, and greenhouses and finding a way to improvise, overcome, and adapt. Go ahead, change slide, next slide. This photo I got from my the recent New Mexico range management specialist, and these are photos here and in the Southwest. And you can clearly see that when you're managing grazing situations, you have to use a very high level of adaptive grazing on moving your cattle at the right time so that you don't overwhelm it and overgraze it, as you see on your lower right-hand corner. That is a field that has been improperly grazed, and you can see that the desert is taking a toll on it, and where you're having compaction, runoff, high evaporation. But on the same soil type, on your upper left-hand corner, you can see a properly grazed field, and on the lower left, you can see a photo that when the plants are properly grazed, they're highly aggregated, full of soil structure. Go ahead, next slide. These are some farmers that are some ranchers and what have you grazing in the beautiful Taos, New Mexico. This was 3 years ago. Went up to visit with them, and they're using the high rotational intensive grazing. So they basically have broken up the fields with hot wire there and into a bunch of paddocks, and so they don't allow the excuse me, they don't allow their cows to graze on any one paddock. They don't remove no more than 50% of the forage, and then they move into the next paddock. And the result, as he is saying, is that his soil has developed a lot of soil structure. The plants regrow much more quickly. He's able to stock at a higher rate. And again, another example at up here on a pasture in Taos, grazing cattle using soil health principles to build soil health. Go ahead. This comes from my friend Brendan Rocky in Center, Colorado. He grows on huge center pivots. He's growing specialty potatoes on sandy soils using a diversity of pollinator strips, cover crops, grazing, diverse rotations, and basically showing that in a very difficult environment at around 7,000 feet in elevation, his understanding is he's a real pro at this. He's a master at this kind of work. Anyone that wants to visit his YouTubes and what have you will learn a lot. Is that he has developed the ability using soil health principles to producing high quality crops, potatoes, using the principles of soil health. And again, just another example that can be done at any place. This is in a short growing season, high elevation, limited water supply, sandy soils, and again, a producer doing an outstanding job. Go ahead and next slide. Okay, this is another young farmer, very similar to the one I mentioned. He's been mentored by my friend Minor Morgan, and he farms a diverse cash crop right in the heart of Albuquerque using hoop houses, diversity of crop rotation, trellises, compost, cover crops, and in such a short time, he really has mastered the technique for growing this high quality crops, and the photos speak for themselves. You can see a system where the principles of soil health are in place, and again, we've done a number of trainings at his place as well, and he's trained a lot of other farmers, and I bring that out from here is that we rely on our best farmers to train other farmers, because it's much easier for another small farmer or large farmer to listen to or to follow the template of someone that's already making it happen. So again, producer Matthew Draper, an outstanding job, and just some of these folks amaze me how much knowledge they've been able to pick up and apply in such a short time. And in the message here that I've talked with Sharma, we've talked many times on the phone and all that, is that soil health can be done anywhere. It is a soil health journey. You have to commit to the understanding, and you want to follow those that have already succeeded. Next slide. Next slide, or are you having problems changing it?
I think it's on the next slide, Rudy. You don't see that?
Okay, now it is. It probably just took a little there. Okay, so now you're seeing work done by NMSU on the Clovis side, eastern New Mexico, and it goes to show you that on these soils that are referred to as highly erodible soils, high sandy soils, just putting them into cover crops, look at how you can see the earthworms very quickly coming back into the soil, and you can see the legume nodules showing up. And the main point here is that the university and NMSU is already doing a great job in working with NRCs and partners and others to bring the science, the technology, the research to show that soil health is a powerful tool. It is the most effective way of dealing with water conservation, salinity, ecosystems, pollinators. I don't know that you're ever going to find anything that will replace how nature does things. So go ahead and change it to the next slide. Okay, here's my friend, Dr. David Johnson, doing outstanding research here at NMSU and growing, you can see the proof in the pudding there in the chili, 17 to 21 tons of green chili. And that's using that with no fertilizers, using the Johnson's Food bioreactor compost. And it goes to show you why you have to constantly be on the innovative side and picking up the best ideas from the farmers, from the producers, whoever has the best knowledge. We bring that in and bring it in as another tool into our toolbox in figuring out how to get soil health on the ground. I'll go to the next slide. Okay, that's Dr. David Johnson showing on the upper left-hand corner. You can see how big his cover crops were growing when he applied his superior microbial diverse and fungal dominant compost that he makes using the Johnson's Food bioreactor. And you can see on the lower right-hand corner, you can see that the quality of the compost biology absolutely will determine what kind of carbon sequestration and nutrient cycling, aggregation building you can build, and it's completely dominated by soil biology. And on the bottom, I have his website where you can click to watch the super reactor, a powerful tool, increasing our understanding of all the things that anyone can do to integrate these components and technology into a soil health management system. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, this one here is a photo from my friend Alejandro Carrillo. I actually met him a number of years back through my friend Ray Archuleta and Gabe Brown. And you can see that he has been able to use very adaptive grazing management with a real deep understanding of range management and soil ecology to transform here on the right-hand side to the left, and he's able to graze his cows. And as far as I'm concerned, I've been around this all my life. This, in my opinion, is probably one of the best examples that I've ever seen of restoring rangeland to very healthy grazing and what have you. And of course, you want to look at his information there. It's Alejandro Carrillo, excellent practice of this, and his understanding is just amazing. So here's another thing you can say, well, my desert, we're in a desert environment, we have harsh environments, it can be done. He's doing this in the Chihuahua area, several hours south of El Paso, and something else to see some of this. It just I showed you that it really takes those innovators to advance the science and art of implementing soil health. Go ahead and change. Mm-hmm. Okay, now what I have here is a photo probably around this one, around 10 years ago, so now we're giving you a definition of soil health to begin with, of a way of farming that in New Mexico, along the northern part, along the rivers and what have you, was a way of farming that had been practiced for hundreds of years. So it's nothing new about this. It's just that we departed up from this way of thinking for whatever reasons and have gone into much more monocultures and large-scale industrial farming that pretty much left behind a lot of the science and ecology and principles of soil health. So we're giving you a definition, giving you a number of examples and various cropping systems. The next thing I want to do is why it's so important in the work that we're doing in Arizona that you get together and learn how to understand how to evaluate your soils using a number of soil health assessments so that you too can see and monitor progress and increase your learning and understanding of why you want to go the direction of soil health. It is the most powerful way to address all the issues that you're facing. So in the photo there, you can see I've done many posters, illustrations, and in front of you, you see there's jars of water with soil in them and all that. And we've used this at over many presentations and field days to teach the basic concepts. And now we're going to go through a number of these assessments. So go to the next slide. Okay, one of the first things you want to do when you're understanding soils is you want to know your soil texture, your percent clay, silt, and sand, and whether you have very fine sand all the way to very coarse. And you want to be able to know what kind of baseline you have. So right at the center on the bottom, you see where it says unstable aggregates, and then it says water stable in the jar. So where it says water stable aggregates, all we did was, and we've done this hundreds of times in various fields, we've gone up with a shovel and just took a soil pad or soil clod, whatever you want to call it, from the top 0 to 3 inch depth, and we just air dried it. And then when you completely air dried, we just immersed it inside a jar of water and placed it in a screen. And you can clearly see that as your soil begins to get healthy, it no longer fall apart so readily. And that's because the sand, silt, and clay are held together by a lot of the different biological glues and roots. That's one of your first indicators if your soil is getting healthy. Next slide. Okay, this I took from a farmer that I came in contact about 2-3 years ago. Notice that why you want to know something about your soil types. In Nrcs, we have plan maps and soil maps that can tell you the soil types. So if you look at the upfront part, it says the sand in the foreground will grow a crop in cool weather, but it requires substantial inputs because this is in the Yuma area where the average is about 107 degrees in July, very low precipitation, 3.2 inches of rainfall per year, and it has a very high annual evaporation from 99 to 102 inches of water, so very harsh environment. But notice when he's planting on the top his cover crops, notice that when the same cover crops were planted on the sandy loam, which is the background, look how much the cover crop mix grew when it was on a sandy loam versus the same mixture when it's sand. So you see why you would want to know some of this information up front. It would allow you to do some planning details before you invest money on your cover crop seeds and the type of irrigation, and especially in an environment like this with a very long growing season and a lot of evaporation potential. So just an example, one of many that we've seen over the last 30 years. Go ahead to the next slide. This one is probably the simplest test that you can conduct. Okay, you see jars there, and all we did was, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we got soil pads or soil clods of 0 to 3 inch depth from the surface. We air dried them, and then we placed them inside a colander there, and then we got a bottle of water and punctured some very small holes and then rained on it. And you can see very clearly on the lower right-hand side that whenever your soil was farmed using the soil health principles that we talked about, notice when the water is being sprayed on the aggregate, that once the soil aggregates or pads become saturated, the water absorbs very easily through the pad, and it comes out of the pad as clear water on the bottom of the jar. Again, a very simple visual demonstration to show how soil health improves the water cycle, is able to store more water, is able to use water more efficiently. So a demonstration that anyone can do with a little practice. Next slide. Okay, this one is called the aggregate facility, very similar to the previous, but just a different way of looking at it. Again, when you put on the photo, you can see that a water stable aggregate inside the jar does not fall apart. This remains clear, and it's the jar that says water stable aggregate. And basically what we have done there is that we have increased the soil microbes and the biology inside the soil, that they are very tenaciously holding the sand, silt, and clay and other minerals together because of their presence and because of the biological glues they produce. And they then have the ideal environment for nutrient cycling and what have you. So a healthy soil is like a sponge. It can hold a lot of water. It still remains well aerated, and it has the right soil structure and capacity to carry out the ecological functions that you want on any kind of cropping system. Next slide. Okay, another visual sign that you've seen, and you would have found all these signs on all the examples that I gave you, most of them in New Mexico, is that you see the presence of surface crop residues in different stages of decomposition, and you can see that the soil is being protected from water evaporation, from wind erosion, from runoff. Temperatures are cooler, it has a higher infiltration rate, and it provides the ideal environment for a diversity of soil organisms and soil food webs to cycle carbon into the soil and protect the soil habitat. Next slide. This photos I took in, man, it's already been 5 years ago. So we have done this over and over. We bought handheld soil thermometer guns, you know, they cost around $20-some. And on the left-hand side, you can see when I measured the surface temperature on April 20th on a soil that had cover on a pecan orchard, the temperature was 77 degrees on the surface. And then when I inserted a soil thermometer on the bottom, the soil temperature at 1 inch depth was 74 degrees. And you can see then that the cover on a pecan orchard has dramatically lowered the temperatures. This is in April in Las Cruces. Now look at the right-hand side. This is exactly 1 foot away from the one with the lower temperature. And right here you can see how much hotter the temperature is when the soil it does not have cover and it's being disked or a herbicide is being used to remove the cover. You can see that the surface temperature on the same date was 133 degrees Fahrenheit at the surface, and then in the soil thermometer on the bottom, 1 inch into the soil was 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can see that soils get very, very hot if they don't have plant cover and surface residues protecting the roots and the soil food web and the soil microbes. And so soil temperature really has a major effect on how efficient your soil health program works. And right in the center, you see a chart, and it basically says this. When your soil temperature is 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 100% of the moisture is used for growing the crop. Now, when your soil gets hotter and it gets to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, only 15% of your moisture is used for growing the crop, the biomass. 85% is lost through evapotranspiration. So you see that soil health does a tremendous job of regulating temperature so it doesn't get too hot, and it prevents water from evaporating, and it allows water to be used much more efficiently. Go ahead and change. Okay, hasn't changed yet.
Rudy, you don't see that? Hold on.
Yeah, it's probably a little, no, there it is. Okay, another visual thing that you want to do is what we've done is with the producer is just go out with a shovel and evaluate. Can you see the living plants, healthy roots, darker soil? Can you see the presence of on the legume plants where you have your nodules showing? Can you see earthworms and biological activity? So all of the stuff here that I'm covering, anybody can do, and it's really, I encourage everyone to do this yearly, several times in the spring, summer, and fall, to take photos and all these demonstrations that I'm going through, to do it yourself and to get good at it so that you can compare what your management is doing. And this is the most, in my opinion, the most effective way and the easiest way to evaluate progress. But you can see this is a no-brainer. If I go in there and I dig out a cover crop species and it has well-aggregated soil, earthworms, and darker color and what have you, that's going to be, to me, a major sign that I'm making progress. And this is what a farmer needs to know for themselves. Go ahead and change the next slide. Okay, we did this last fall on some grains grasses in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So you can see we got a good plant properly grazed, and on the lower right-hand corner, we got that plant and root, and we just flushed it up and down in water, and all that foamy white stuff that you're seeing, that is all the different organic compounds, root exudates that have come off the roots. And that's showing you how much organic compounds are in the soil that are feeding the soil biology when the plant is properly grazed. And again, very visual. If I go and see a properly grazed plant, on the examples that I gave you at the beginning of this slide, and then we slash those roots in the water, and you see all that foamy white stuff, that's your proof that the properly grazed plants are producing all kinds of organic compounds. And that foamy white stuff you see in there, that is the major food source for all the invisible biology of microorganisms that are making the soil healthy. Next slide. Okay, we did this a couple of months ago at, remember the slides that I showed you of the producers here in Albuquerque? Those are from, this is using the rain simulator that your Nrcs in Arizona has, and you can get them to help you do trainings using the rain simulator to illustrate the concepts. So I want to point out where, on your photo where it's highlighted with blue on the outline, it says vegetable garden with high infiltration rate. That came from the slides that I previously showed you from Minor Morgan's and Matthew Draper's vegetable farm. Okay, when we took this soil samples, it had rained the previous day a little more than an inch. So these soils were already at fill capacity. However, when we put the rain simulator, we allowed rain to fall in this pan. Notice where it says vegetable garden with high infiltration rate. Notice the jar on the back, how much water still infiltrated through the soil and collected on the bottom jar. Okay. Now notice an adjacent field where it says cultivated field with low infiltration rate. Notice when the soil did not have cover crops and good management system, that when we turned on the rain simulator, the majority of all the water ran off and it collected on the front jar where you can see the jar full of murky water. That's the consequence of tillage, monocultures, and over-fertilizing and what have you. You will destroy soil aggregation and harm the biology that does aggregates, and you won't be able to infiltrate water. That's why you got to have healthy soil to utilize every drop of water to its potential. Now, to the left side of the screen, you'll see a fruit orchard with high infiltration rate. If you look at the back jar where it says high infiltration rate, notice that the majority of the water moved through the soil and was collected on the back jar. And that was using, that was in a fruit orchard using various types of orchard grass. Now, right to the right-hand side of it, it says pecan orchard with Bermuda grass mode. Notice that the Bermuda grass was not able to infiltrate a lot of water in a pecan orchard, and so using the rain infiltrator into the rain simulator, you can see that a lot of the water ran off with a lot of the soil. So what's the whole purpose of this rain simulator demonstration? Is to show that you got to have soil health principles, diversity of rotations, cover crops, proper management, proper irrigation. It has to be a systems approach in order for you to build soil structure and sequester carbon and build the environment that you want. If you don't, you won't be able to optimize water use, salinity management, and all these things that are so important to us. So go ahead and change. Okay, this is a simpler version of the previous slides where you can contact your Nrcs soil health folks at the state office and get help and say, hey, we would like to get some training on how to use this 6-inch aluminum rings to do some basic infiltration demonstrations so that you can see how well water is infiltrating in your soil. Very simple test to run. All of these tests that we're talking about, they're actually very easy to use. On the lower right-hand corner where it says conventional versus no-till, notice that after we applied an inch of water, that in just under like 20 or 30 seconds, where it says no-till with cover crops, notice that the water has disappeared because it has a higher infiltration rate. And notice the conventional one still has water ponding, and so we don't want that. We want to get all of our dysfunctional soils to move to high aggregation and high infiltration rates because we want to utilize every drop of water. Go ahead. Okay, another simple tool that you can all use is called a penetrometer. On your left-hand corner, you can see this instrument costs around $200. And then right in the center, it's a gauge, and it reads PSI. That stands for pounds per square inch. And basically, once you have healthy soils, what you will find is that the majority of your readings as you push that penetrometer into the soil will read under 100, 150 pounds per square inch. And a very simple tool to use to measure and record. And it's just you just basically want to have the lowest readings that you can in your field as you start building soil health, because that'll tell you that your soil is less dense, it has high infiltration rate, it's highly aggregated, and a very simple reading to do measurement. And again, anybody can do this, and I encourage everyone to get really good at this assessment so that you can monitor your progress. Next slide. This is called a slum test. Again, an extremely easy test to do. You get soil from your top 0 to 2, 3 inch depth. you crumble it, you let it completely get air dry, and then you get that soil and you place it in a colander and you just immerse it in the water so that it completely becomes, all the capillary water will rise and saturate the soil. Once it's done that, it will happen very quickly. You just flip those saturated soils on a plastic plate like you see there. And the first thing that you will notice that when you start developing good soil structure, where it says well aggregated soil, it'll maintain its structural integrity. In other words, it doesn't collapse into a mud patty as it does on the left, where it says poorly aggregated soil. Again, these visuals are some of the most easiest things for you to observe and say, hey, are all of my systems approach of practices based on soil health, is it working? And that's how you proceed with this kind of stuff. Next slide. Okay, another one, and I know I say this for all of them, that these are all easy because they really are. This is going on with the shovel and beginning to see in the majority of your cropping systems when you begin to see the number of earthworms, the size, and your soil becoming very porous. You can see earthworm cast. Again, this is a keystone indicator. Once you start getting earthworms like this, you know that you're in the right direction, since earthworms are soil organisms that cannot handle any kind of harsh environment. So they do really well in the majority of cropping systems, and they're an indicator that your soil isn't going in the right direction. Next slide.
You see that, Rudy?
It is having, okay, there it is. So for some reason, some plays are taking a little longer. Okay, this is another very popular tool that anyone can buy. And again, I highly recommend that you get these tools and you get the right training and the right guides to use them. But it's called a Brix refractometer. And you get also a tool with it to where, for example, for any of your vegetables, whether it be a tomato, a cucumber, a grape, or whatever, celery, you just get it and you squeeze the juice out and you place a few drops on that Brix refractometer, and then you put the lid on it and then you face it towards the sun. And there's guides on that. You gotta read up a little bit on this, but it's pretty straightforward. And basically what you're going to find as your soils get much more richer in organic matter, biology, earthworms, and what have you, is that a bigger percentage of the contents of the dissolved contents will be much higher levels of sugars, minerals, amino acid, proteins, lipids, and all kinds of other complex compounds. And so basically, more of the volume the volume of your solution will be of a high nutrient content. And for people that are in the health situation, they will refer to that as nutrient density. So therefore, nutrient density is a function of highly functioning, healthy soils, and it'll show up as in terms of the nutrition that's in the actual sap that's in the actual vegetables. I want to point out also that you can also just get the leaves of any plant and squeeze the sap out of the leaves and the petioles, and that's also will give you pretty much a similar reading. So go to the next slide, and it'll show a chart that gives you readings. Okay, nothing yet. Okay, looks like I'm having a connection.
Hold on a sec, Rudy. Let me go back. There we go. How about that? Rudy, you there? Hold on a moment, everybody. I think he had to get off and he will have to log back on. Some more of the technological fun that we are dealing with in this new situation. In the meantime, does anyone have any questions? Because you can either hit the chat or there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. When you put your mouse at the bottom of your screen, that black menu comes up. Hold on a moment, everybody. Gonna make sure Rudy, you there? Rudy, can you hear me? I show that he's logging back on. Hold on a moment, everybody. We'll get Rudy back on. I know he was trying to log back on. I want to apologize to everybody. I know this is a bit of a delay. Unfortunately, the issues we're dealing with technology. Rudy is currently logging on, so if you'll just be patient and hang in with us for just another moment. He's actually almost through his slideshow, and then we'll have time for lots of questions. So please stick around. All right, everybody. I think I see that Rudy is able to log back on. So thank you so much for being patient. We apologize again for all of these issues. We're all learning Zoom. I don't know if anyone has a lot of experience. I think Sarah and some folks out there do, but we're all figuring this out. Hold on a moment. We'll get Rudy back on. Okay, Rudy. Can you hear me, Rudy?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I apologize. Something happened. Let me get back
My computer just completely logged off and shut down, and I had to restart all over again. But I'm not surprised, and it's done this before. So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but we're glad you could join us again. Can you see the slide?
Not yet. I don't see anything yet. Do you want me to bring up mine?
Let's see, we're on slide. Let's see, you said they're numbered. You can't see my PowerPoint?
Now I see it.
Okay, all right, Rudy, take it away again. Sorry for the delay.
Okay, yeah, hopefully we doesn't do that. Okay, go ahead and right now what you're seeing is that you're seeing one of many charts that tells you how to read that. And as I was talking, I think I was on asparagus. You can see that if the soil was highly cultivated with low organic matter, low biology and what have you, and I was to extract the sap out of the asparagus, it would have a very poor reading, and that would say that 2% of all the solids there are actually sugars, proteins, and what have you. However, if I wanted to apply soil health principles there, based on the example and assessments that I talked about, we can get the asparagus to be at a much higher nutrient density by using soil health principles to where it says excellent, where it says 8% of the whole fluids are actually nutrients. Then this goes to show you how soil health can be monitored in terms of nutrient density. Go ahead and change it. Okay, I bring up this photo of Santa Fe farmers market because I work with all kinds of farmers, large farmers, medium, small, and what have you. And I always tell the farmers there's always more than one outlet for your crop. And for example, when we started doing this many years ago, we were one of the first families to start the Santa Fe farmers market in the early 1970s. And so we never had any problem growing our crops that were based on soil health management systems, because we always have customers, whether at the farmers market, co-ops, restaurants, customers at home, and what have you. And I just bring that out is that there's many options when you go with soil health to diversify not only your crops and building healthy, nutritious plants, but many places to where you can sell your product at. Okay, looks like it's giving me a little trouble here. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you, Rudy.
Okay, it's trying to connect, and
we're on the next slide.
It's trying to connect. Give me a minute here. It disconnected here, but I can hear you now, and didn't disconnect me with you.
You still there? Oh, darn it. It looks like he's having a lot of issues again. Sorry about this, folks. Hold on a second. Okay, looks like he's back. Sorry about this, folks. We're slave to the internet and to technology at this point. Rudy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Sorry, I don't know what keeps happening over there, but here, I'm going to share the screen again.
Yeah, I know. It's a tough one. If it doesn't open, go ahead.
There we go.
All right. Okay.
Can you,
okay, now I see
the slide?
it. Yeah, I can see the slide. Okay, so this one here, you're seeing an example of the rain simulator on grazing on different levels of management. And the main thing that I want to point out here is that where it says excellent rotational grazing, you can see that when the rain simulator was put on this soil, you can see that the jar on the back has infiltrated all the water from the rain simulator, and it basically almost had very little water runoff. That's just strictly a result of management of properly grazing. And you can clearly see on the right-hand photo, you can see where it shows the excellent rotational grazing has a lot of roots at the time that they move the cattle from one paddock to another. So again, various ways of evaluating your soil health assessment. Go ahead and change it.
Can you see that, Rudy?
Not yet. It's probably taking a little minute to change. Not yet. It's probably going to, it's lagging a little bit. Give it a second. I think my computer is just having a headache on it. It's reconnecting again.
It's the picture with the pecan orchard and the water table, where they dug out that water table to look at that. You there, Rudy? Doesn't look like this is our day for technology working. Hold on a moment, folks. Let me see if he is probably trying to get back on. Oh, he is. Okay, Rudy? Rudy, can you hear me? Rudy, you might have yourself muted. If you go to the lower portion of the screen, that black menu should come up on the very left. Oh, there, wait, there we go, Rudy. How about now?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Woo.
Yeah. So my thing is, my situation is trying to connect back. Why don't I just bring up my slide on mine and see if that just makes it easier. Can you hear me?
Yes, and I'm pulling back up the slides, and we're at that water table.
Okay, I'm gonna bring up mine and see, because my computer is connecting and disconnecting, connecting and disconnecting, which it sometimes doesn't. So I see it now, but if it gives this kind of trouble, let me bring up mine. But right now I see the slide. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so anyways, here you can see that the first 0 to 14-inch depth is a silt loam, and the next layer is a coarse sand, and it goes to coarse sand all the way to the water table around at 5 feet. So again, just part of how we go about making sure that we understand our system that we're about to manage soil health wise. Go ahead, change.
Oops, there we go.
Okay, another thing that we look at, this would be a small canal, and this is in northern New Mexico, and many of the communities would have small canals. And on the lower left-hand corner, you see a head gate where the water comes out into the field. Again, all I'm trying to illustrate here is that we do this as an interdisciplinary team. This I would do with our field engineering technician, and I've done a lot of this work myself, but this is part of understanding your water source, the amount, selecting the right irrigation system, what have you. So just another assessment that we do. Go ahead. Nothing. Okay. Okay. This one also is a simple handout where you can have one of our Nrcs soil scientists provide training on how to do the feel and appearance to use a common sense, easy approach in the field to measure the amount of moisture based on whether it crumbles and it's low of available moisture, or whether it is a water film on your hand and it tells you approximately how much water. Again, simple assessment tools with a little practice that you can learn to help you understand your moisture in your soil. Next slide. Okay, not yet.
You don't see that, Rudy?
Now, yeah, it's just taking a time. Okay, another simple assessment. Here you see on your left-hand side the roots exposed in a pecan orchard where about 29 years ago they had a flood somewhere in the east side of in the El Paso, I think somewhere in Texas, and the water removed all the soil, and a friend of mine knew how much I liked studying soils and roots, took photos of it, and it just goes to show you in the pecan root there that in the 0 to 2 foot depth, that the majority of your feeder roots is where the plant is drinking water and taking out nutrients. But again, part of the overall assessment of understanding your soil, your roots, your crops, it's part of having a thorough understanding. You're making decisions on that knowledge. Go ahead. Taking a little long, but okay. Now it's looks like it lost it. Now it's connecting again. It's having a rough time.
It's on the open drain picture with the adjacent fields have a shallow water table.
Yeah, but on my computer it's connecting, disconnecting, and give it a minute. It's on my problem on my side. I don't know why it's having such a headache, you know.
Well, Rudy, do you want to answer a few questions while we're going along? I don't see, one, I wanted to remind everybody that's on the line, if you go to the lower portion of your screen and you put your mouse, your arrow down there, you can pull up a black menu that will have a chat or a Q&A. You can hit that in the chat specifically, which I think is easier. If you look at you go down to the bottom of the chat when it pulls up that little menu, and it has a to selection. You could do to all attendees, to me, to Rudy. I'll see any questions that come up and I'll read it to Rudy. Rudy, still having issues with your computer? You there, Rudy? Goodness, folks, this just isn't our day with technology. Hold on a moment, let me go back. I bet he has logged back in. Yes, he is. Hold on a moment, folks. Rudy, you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, here we go. I was going to say, if you're having issues, we could start. I've got some questions for you, and
Okay,
others might too.
Okay.
But if you want to keep going, you can. Do you see it?
Oh, yeah, I can see this slide. Let's see what happens here. Here you're just seeing that if you're along a river system or a canal, you'd want to make sure that that you understand your depth to water table as influenced by an open drain. Just another piece of information. Go ahead and change.
Hold on. There you go. See that?
Not yet. It's a little slow. It hasn't changed yet. Hold on.
And let me try it again.
It's computer's having a heck of a time connecting and
It's the
reconnecting.
slide with all the insects and the bees and the orb weavers and dragonflies.
Yeah, you know what? It's not. Since we're still connected, why don't I just bring up mine? Sharma, can you hear me?
Yeah, just stay on the line and I'll tell you which slide we're going to. Does that work?
Okay. Yeah, but I'm going to stay on the line. I'm just going to bring up my PowerPoint, and I won't rely on you. So that maybe it'll work a little better if I bring up my own.
That might.
Who knows? I have no idea. It might just be just a bad time of the day, and the connection is just terrible. Yeah. it's trying to connect again, and it's not having a happy time on that.
Okay, well, I think you could stay on the phone, and then somehow if you can view your PowerPoint at the same time, we'll go through and I'll.
Okay.
Because I think we're getting towards the end, aren't we?
Yeah, we got quite a few more slides to go, but I'm going to see if I can bring up my.
Well, I bet there's lots of questions. I haven't seen any as of yet, but I know I have some, and I'm sure our attendees do as well. Rudy, you there? Sorry again, folks. He's logged back in. We're just, for some reason, he seems to be having some computer issues on his end. Wish we could all do this in person, but I know we probably all do. Rudy? Rudy, do you have yourself muted? Oh, good. I've got a question too. Let me get Rudy unmuted and I will read that question. Rudy, I think you have to unmute yourself on that menu at the bottom. It won't allow me to do so. Hold on a second, folks. Yeah, we've got to wait till we could get him unmuted back on here. In the meantime, Scott, I know you're still on. I don't know if you could answer this question. Scott, you still there?
I am here.
We've got a question. I don't know if you can answer it. If you can't, that's okay. And we'll wait till Rudy gets back on. But we've got a question about how do you plant crops into the field infested with Bermuda grass and field bindweed? Do you want to wait for Rudy or you want to answer that?
I don't have a good answer to that. That's
okay. That's a Rudy question.
Well, and it's a double-edged sword too.
How so?
Well, I think it would require some chemical use, and that defeats soil health.
Okay, Scott, Rudy's back on. Thank you for even interjecting your knowledge in here. Hold on a sec. We're gonna put you back on mute and see if we could get Rudy back on to finish his presentation. Rudy, you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me or not?
Yeah, I'll get back to the PowerPoint, but in the meantime, I'm gonna ask you a question that popped up. This is from one of the attendees. Okay?
Sharma, before you ask, Sharma, instead of me connecting with the Zoom, I'm just going to bring up my PowerPoint and make sure that we're on the same slide, as long as I can hear you on this thing.
Yep, that works. I think that might be better because it sounds like your computer's just going to keep kicking you off.
It's having just a nightmare, I guess, yeah.
It figures. Yeah. That's okay.
Okay, let me bring up my PowerPoint. What slide were we on the last one?
Here, let's see, I will pull up mine and
Yeah, but don't bring it up for the whole thing so it doesn't shut off the voice or whatever. Because I have my PowerPoint on and I have the connection with the phone with you.
Would you want to try to share your screen and just do it that way? We were sharing mine because I had your PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. No, then you know what? It's full of glitches. Can you just bring it up on yours and I'll just. I think we were on slide 44 on the insects, right?
Let's see. I gotta look at the number. Hold on. Pulling that back up. Yeah, the one with the orbs weaver, the insects and all that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So on that photo there, I have my own PowerPoint up without connecting to the Zoom. The main thing there is that what we have found, the different cropping systems is an enormous diversity of pollinators, lady beetles, and all kinds of beneficial insects and predators and what have you. And all the only reason that they show up is that when you have soil health principles, you restore all the habitat. And so healthy systems rely on all the individual organisms and from pollinators, hummingbirds, So it's just basically what you're seeing in that photo is that healthy ecosystems restores the habitat for all the organisms. So let's now go to the next slide. It's slide number 45. It says, build it and they will come. Do you have that?
Yes.
Okay. This comes from a lot of really awesome work that Dr. Jonathan Lundgren has done, and you can Google some of his YouTubes. They're outstanding. But he basically has this thing that when you have a healthy soil, he has found that there are 1,700 beneficial insects to every pest in a healthy soil. So you can see that your pest management program will come from restoring all the biological beneficials, and that's how you move away from harmful pesticides, herbicides, and stuff like that by having a healthy biology. Let's now go to slide number 46, and it says animal impact on the upper left. Do you see that?
Yes. And hold on a moment, Rudy. I just wanted to tell William we'll get to your question when Rudy's done. So stay on the line because we'll get to that.
Let's see if we can go through the slide and then we'll answer questions. Okay, this one I get from mine.
Yeah, animal impact.
Okay, so this comes a photo that my friend Gabe Brown took from his farm operation, and of course he's known all over the world for his very advanced soil health, and this principle applies anywhere. Is that healthy ecosystems accommodates all the critters that we have, and that's how a healthy ecosystem functions. Let's go to the next slide number 47.
Okay.
You got it?
Yes.
Okay, it's indicators that your soil is getting healthy. So these are just a list of many. There's many more than this. A healthy soil has high infiltration rates, has high water stable aggregates as we demonstrated, has healthy plants, healthy roots. You can count more earthworms, has very diverse soil food web and beneficial organisms, has a low PSI as we saw with the penetrometer. Your soil is highly aggregated, has good gas exchange, has abundant predators and pollinators. You can see surface residues and different signs of decomposition. With your handheld surface thermometer or soil thermometer, you see much lower temperatures. With the higher organic matter, you have higher water holding capacity. You have better granulated structure. You have darker soils. Let's move on to the next slide.
Okay.
In the next slide, you see where you see the diagnosing soil health.
Yes.
Okay. All the
soil health indicators and observations. Yes. Yeah, we see that.
So you see where you see what's his name was diagnosing soil health?
Yes.
The main point that we're doing there is that the examples that I gave you and the field assessments that I covered with you, all you're doing is assessing how healthy is your soil, no different than you would go to the hospital and get x-rays, blood work, and all kinds of exams to make a decision on your health. That's all soil health is about. It's a very complex, they're the most complex ecosystems that we know of. And all we're trying to do is provide a systems approach of the right combination of practices to improve the health of the soil. And you all seen that we talked about low temperatures, higher earthworm, low PSI, penetrometer, and you saw all the indicators. So let's go to the next slide.
Okay, next slide. This health assessment sheet.
Yeah, and this just covers everything that I talked about. And this is something that we in the soil health division developed and you have access to it, and you really want to include your Nrcs and your soil health folks and your partners to help you fill out this sheet, go to the next page.
Okay.
And that's just a continuation of things that we already talked about. Now go to the slide number 51.
Okay.
And there you can see we already talked about soil cover, residue breakdown, aggregate stability, compaction, and we've already covered that and much more of how we use those in-field soil assessments to get an understanding of what our soils are up to. Go to the next slide, slide 52.
Okay.
Again, this is an example of one of many farms that have taken it to soil health, and on the right-hand side, it will show that soil health results in optimized profit, reduced risk, higher profit, improved productivity, higher yield, and better qualities, better increase in land values, and a more resilient and resistant soil, and substantial and for the most part, complete reduction of water and wind erosion. And more importantly, for a farmer economics, way less inputs when the soil is healthy. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay. Next slide.
Where it says they're implementing soil health principles. So what you see on this slide here is what shows up on all of our healthy soils. So starting with the living roots and mycorrhiza, beneficial fungi, and then going to your right, it causes the soil to become well aggregated. We already covered examples to that. And then where it says pores, macropores, we saw using the rain simulator and a few other demos that your soil becomes very porous and has a high infiltration rate. And when we go to the top where it says surface residues, I gave you examples where we saw residues at different stages of decomposition. And then when we come to earthworms, we see that you can see the pores, the earthworms, the numbers. And so this 5 basic functions return to the soil when they have soil health principles. Let's go to the next one.
Okay, next slide.
Okay, the next one, excuse me, this has to do with what is the basic science that we know this works, right? Because a lot of people will say, well, I want to know what proof do you have that this works? So on the bottom left-hand corner, you see from when the soil has water-stable aggregates and the above you see a healthy system. What we find on your right-hand side, we find that we have, when it comes to temperatures, we have lower surface and soil temperatures. We covered that. In terms of oxygen, we have very porous soils. Therefore, we have really good oxygen exchange with carbon dioxide. When you look at the food circle there, there's plenty of food in terms of crop residues, root exudates, and very diverse soil food web organisms that eat each other. When we look at moisture, a soil that has high aggregation, high soil organic matter holds a lot more moisture. When we look at nutrients, the nutrients are coming from the decomposition of residues, of root exudates, of organisms eating each other, and organisms able to extract nutrients from the soil. When we look at the one that says predation, and you have very diverse soil food webs, you have a diversity of microorganisms eating each other. And then you have the circle of competition, which means that now you have an environment where there's a lot of beneficial effects of this competition, symbiotic relationships, and organisms are not only working with each other, but working with the plants, and that's how that competition has to do with the overall function of the soil. When it comes to salinity and what you're seeing here, the picture I'm trying to paint is that all of these factors and others are working synergistically at optimal conditions that allows you to have way less salinity problems and pH problems. So the soil organisms live in the soil solution, they live inside the soil, and it allows the organisms to function under optimal conditions. And that's the environment where you have nutrient cycling. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay, next slide.
Okay, the next slide basically covers who's doing all the work. And as you can see there, you got to have very diverse soil food webs in order for nutrient cycling to take place. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay, next. Okay.
In the next slide, you will see that it takes diverse plants with diverse roots to feed a very diverse soil food web to achieve very healthy soil. You can never break that role in building healthy soils, and that's why we have the principles of soil health and the examples that I gave. All we are doing is providing the environment for a diversity of soil food web to build soil structure, to cycle nutrients and hold water. So you can see the whole thing is connected. Go to the next slide.
All right, next.
The next slide shows the most important thing. Where is all this energy coming from? It's coming from living plants with diverse roots that are harvesting the sun's energy through photosynthesis that produce enormous amount of root exudates. And that's the major source that feeds the biology, is all the root exudates that came from the plant through photosynthesis, and together they build very structured soil. Go to the next slide.
All right, next.
So everyone hang in there, we're getting towards the end. It's a lot of information. Okay, the next slide, you see the visible proof, right? You see roots that are highly structured, you see earthworms, you see very porous aggregated soils, and again, just the visual proof that soil health systems are the most effective. Next slide.
All right, next.
So this slide, you'll see medical doctor Daphne Miller. I believe she's from the San Francisco area, and she teaches a lot of her medical students the importance that biologically active soils produce nutrient-dense crops. And all you're seeing there, she's holding two pair of briefs there, shorts, or whatever you want to call them. And the one that's on the right hand that's full of holes is a pair of shorts buried in a very biologically active soil. You can see that the microbes have no problem decomposing all the fibers on it. And the one on the left-hand side where you see very little biological activity, that's coming from a conventionally soil that is highly cultivated, monoculture, fertilizers. What it does is it has hampered the biology in the soil. So again, a visual observation. Go to the next slide.
Next.
And again, you can see on your right-hand side, you see a tree growing on rocks. And the main point there is the greatest geological force is life itself. So it takes living plants to feed living soil to achieve all the things that we want. And that's just a point that I want to make on that. Next slide.
All right, next.
The next thing that I want to emphasize here is that the ability to store and use water in the soil is greatly enhanced by soil biology, by soil organic matter, and by using soil health principles. And let's move on to the next slide.
All right, next.
Okay, these are soil samples that I took from the two organic producers that I showed you early on the slides. You can clearly see on the left hand where it shows a sandy loam, and then on below it has a bucket of water. And immediately to the right, it shows the same soil type, very lighter color. That's the function of not having diversity or cover crops and what have you. So you see two soil types. The only thing that is different is management. The one with the darker soil has higher water holding capacity, and that's coming from the examples you saw. And you can see photos below there of the diversity of cover crops, cash crops, and proper irrigation. Also, we on the darker colored soils, you can see that we found over 20 earthworms in a 0 to 6 inch depth. Next slide.
Next. Okay.
Okay, on the next slide, what we're doing is that where it says healthy soil, all we are doing is by implementing soil health principles, is we're making the soil way less dense with higher organic matter. Therefore, it's a very porous soil, and it's able to hold a lot more water like a sponge. That's the only thing I want you to really get out of that. Go to the next slide.
All right, next.
Okay, now, why does it matter how much organic matter you can hold? If you see where it says percent organic matter, if I go from 1% to 3% on a sill loam, I will increase the water holding capacity by 1 inch, 1 acre inch. So 1 acre inch is the same thing as you having an additional 27,150 gallons of water per acre inch. That's how much more water you have in a foot of soil. So you can see that a healthy soil, higher organic matter, higher water holding capacity, more available water for the plants. Next slide.
Next.
Okay, the next one, you just see a jar of water, or I'm illustrating there that all irrigation's water have a certain level of soluble salt. The only thing that I'm trying to point out here is that on the lower left-hand corner where it says soil structure. You can see one says functional and the other one says poor function. We have found repeatedly that soils that use soil health systems and increasing organic matter are much, much more easier to manage any type of salinity problem. So you can see that even salinity management is most effectively managed by having a healthy soil. Let's go to the next one.
Okay.
Okay, there, I want to do a brief summary as we're coming into a landing here. On the right-hand side, you see, again, diverse plants, diverse roots, harvesting the sun's energy, producing photosynthesis. The first major product of photosynthesis is glucose, and using the soil health principles that we already covered to your right, what we are doing is feeding microbes the diversity of soil organisms, and they are building a soil structure that you can see there. So this is just a summary of everything we covered as to why do we do soil health. Let's go to slide 67.
Okay.
Again, I put this slide many years ago, but it basically shows that we use the diversity of cover crop species to help build soil health at a much faster pace than you can without it. The next slide.
Okay.
This slide just basically shows that with a little planning, you want to make sure that you have as much diversity in your cover crop selection of cool season, warm season grasses, broadleafs, and brassicas. And the goal here is that based on your resource concerns, the more diversity, the more biomass you will put on in your field. So look at the lower right-hand side. Do you see where it says multi-species cover crop? And then on the bottom it says monoculture. You see only where multi-species cover crops are grown together can you actually put on biomass and build soil carbon much faster. That's the reason for not planting single cover crops by themselves. Go to the next slide.
Okay.
This is a field in Albuquerque that I took a photo of around 10 years ago, and we planted in 8-way cover crop species on soils that were highly disturbed. I mean, they had a lot of laser leveling, cultivation, mobile plowing, disking, fertilizing, all that. The soils were in really bad shape. But after just planting one mixture of cover crop species for after 2 months, you can see that the soil quickly began to aggregate. So one of the things we've learned about soil health is that soils are very resilient. So they're able to build their health back real quick. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, one of the things that we observe from using soil tests such as the PLFA, stands for phospholipid fatty acid analysis, and a few other tests, is that soils as they begin to get healthy will increase in their biology in terms of having higher amounts of beneficial mycorrhizal fungi. So that's what you're seeing at the lower right-hand corner, where you see all those little stringy things coming out of the roots. And then on the upper left-hand corner, you see an actual root where it's showing that a close-up of how mycorrhiza is growing out of the roots. Can everyone see that? That's just going to show you that you improve your biology. Go to the next slide.
All right. Okay.
And as we're coming here on the last few slides, what we find when we're doing soil health systems and doing all this evaluation, we find that when you remove all the water from a plant, that the majority of the plant is carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. I give you that percent. Therefore, only a very small amount of elements are actually coming from the soil that makes up the rest of the nutrients, such as your potassium, your phosphorus, magnesium, and micronutrients. So in reality, a healthy soil, when it has a diversity of biology, is very easily able to extract nutrients that it needs because it has the biology in place. Go to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, here's a photo from my friend, Dr. Christine Jones. She does probably some of the best work on describing this concept that we've talked about. She has a lot of YouTubes, and it basically covers why we go for soil health. So everyone can see on that photo, you see the real tall, dark green row of wheat in that field. And then to both sides, you see way lower growth. In that photo, all they did was they removed the fence to combine two fields together. And while the fence was there for decades, it was never plowed, and the grasses and other stuff that grew there were never disturbed. But once they removed the fence and planted wheat, the fence line that didn't have any of that disturbance of fertilizers, pesticides, tillage grew wheat the best because it was following the soil health principles. And again, I recommend everyone that as you're going down this journey, get well versed in all this. And Dr. Christine Jones has a lot of outstanding videos describing everything that I talked about, and it's really just part of the learning process. Go to the next slide.
Okay.
So when we're looking at understanding how soil health works in terms of an ecological system, you have to have a different paradigm. You got to think at a much higher level than our current conventional farming in order for you to make the changes, or you won't be convinced about it. So the easiest way to understand it is on the right-hand side, you can see a car there. It says holism. That car will only work as long as all the thousands of parts below it are intricately connected and in relationship with each other, and the car has fuel in it to make it run. Okay, so that's a no-brainer. I can see the car. I don't want the bottom part analyzed to death without understanding that unless all the parts are connected, it won't work. So when you go to the left-hand side and you see the cow, the person, the mountains, the grass, it's the same concept. Every part of the system has to be working and functioning for the system to work, or otherwise it won't work efficiently. And that's the whole science behind this soil ecology. Go to the next slide.
Okay.
What I have there is a number of demonstrations that we have done over many years to illustrate the examples that I showed you on the field assessments. And the main point that I want to place there is that unless you understand at a high level soil function and what the soil is doing from a biological component, you won't be convinced of making the changes. And it won't be that it works, it's just that you won't understand what was going on. Okay, go to the
Okay.
This slide goes to show is that in addition to growing a healthy crop, nutrient dense, lower inputs, conserving water, soils provide an enormous service of ecosystem services that we all, clean water, clean air, clean habitat, all the things that you can think of. It's a function of a healthy ecosystem, and farmers and ranchers play the most critical role in protecting this vital resource. Now, go to our final slide, and that'll be the end of this presentation.
Okay.
Anyways, I got this slide from my friend Dr. David Johnson in MSU, and I think this tells the whole story. What's the consequence of not getting soil health right on a global basis when your soil is not functioning at its highest potential? We cannot continue to have this kind of wind erosion, salinization, water erosion, and what have you. And these are not functioning systems. These systems are actually very dangerous to be on this path to where we don't change course to build soil health. And I'm sorry that we have so many problems with this technology, but it's not our fault. I would have preferred doing this live in a presentation, but better some way than none. So I end this presentation like this, Sharma, and saying that we covered a lot of territory, and as you and I had talked about, I emphasized that you have to be on this constant soil health learning curve and learning how to apply this kind of stuff. But as you can see, I gave you plenty of examples here in New Mexico and several in Arizona, and the excellent example of range grazing in Mexico. And the main point that I encourage all of our folks going into this is that stay at this, be committed to the soil health, and be well versed and get network how to do this kind of area so that you can advance the science and the art of soil health. Other than that, Sharma, unless you have questions, here, see what I can help you out with.
Rudy, thank you so much. That's full of such great information, and I've been through your PowerPoint a couple times now, but I even learned more. So thank you so much, and I hope all the attendees did as well. We have a lot of questions, so are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, the first question is, how do you plant crops into the field infested with Bermuda grass and field bindweed?
But which crop are you talking about?
So let's see, it says infested with Bermuda grass. It didn't say what kind of crops, it's just general.
Okay, so here's the thing about giving general advice, and it's something that I have told all the folks that you saw in this photos and others that I work with, that unless you do a thorough field assessment and you say what your crop rotation, your irrigation, unless you have background, I can't give you information based without context. So I don't want to tell someone to do something, but I don't know the soil type, how they irrigate, how they fertilize, and all that. So the whole premise of this PowerPoint presentation is you got to know your context and your system before you're going to ask how to solve a problem. Otherwise, the information is not useful.
So Rudy, would they go to the state NRCS office here in Arizona?
Yeah, you got to start with your field office with a good plan. And the assessments that I walk you through, using looking at earthworms and infiltration, all that. I don't do, with all the folks that I work with, I would not do any kind of planning without that background as a baseline to start off from. Otherwise, the information is not useful at all.
Okay. All right. We've
That's
got
the
another.
reason.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go on, Rudy.
No, that's the reason for having good in-field, a conservation plan, field assessment. You got to know where you're at and what you're doing to properly have an answer to your questions.
And to get the field assessment, they contact their district conservationists at the NRCS in their area or the state office. Yeah.
Yeah, and you ask, and a lot of what this is going to lead to is that you're going to need folks trained to help you walk through this. Everything that I showed you is really something that anybody can learn. But initially, when you've never done it, it's best to have someone that has done it walk you through all the steps so that you're well informed with enough information to ask the right questions and to have the right practices and the right order or sequence of events on how you're going to fix a problem. And that's how I go about. Yeah, that's how I go about.
Thank you, Rudy. Okay, you ready for question 2?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, if a Johnson grass stand is ripped, will the stand increase?
If the Johnson grass stand, can you repeat that again?
It says, if a Johnson grass stand is ripped, will the stand increase?
Oh, yes, it will, but ripping that by itself is not an answer, again, without knowing all what we just previously covered. So that in itself would not solve anything, just ripping it, because you're going to be able to spread the spread of those things. Again, it would be what we previously covered. What's your context? What are you trying to do?
Okay, thank you, Rudy. I got another one here. If a 500-acre pasture with high day content, that might be a typo, and Tobosa is capped after a flood, what tools would break that cap? Does that make sense to you?
I didn't really understand. Say 500-acre, what? I didn't really
Oh, sorry. Okay. I misread. I apologize. Boy, I butchered that. If a 500-acre pasture with high clay, sorry about that, folks, high clay content and Tobosa, T-O-B-O-S-S-A, is capped after a flood, what tools would break that cap?
The first question would be why is it capping? It's very likely overgrazed, because if it's properly grazed, it won't overcap. It'll be highly aggregated. So we're probably talking about a field that is overgrazed and has lost the roots and the ability to build soil aggregates. So the first thing that I would go for is that it needs to be on a properly grazed planting in order to build aggregates. But a tool that you would want to do is do some basic a light ripping on it to break it up. But that is like putting a Band-Aid on it. That's not getting to the root cause. Okay,
thank you. And I got another one. Do you know of any producers or researchers using PFLA tests on rangelands?
I do not personally know that, but PLFA can be used on any cropping system, because all you're doing is analyzing the soil and relating the data compared to the management of your field. So remember I showed you the photo of Alejandro Carrillo from Chihuahua, and how well his desert land is full of pasture?
Yes.
Okay, his soils come back at a very high reading in soil biology and in aggregation, because it has the proper management to restore the biology in the soil. So it's a matter of management that determines how useful a PLFA test or any other soil test. All it is a measurement of your stewardship and management, and that's how they use that tool.
Okay, thank you. And I've got just so you know, if anybody has any other questions, again, put your arrow, the little mouse pointer at the bottom of the screen, that black menu will come up, and hit that chat button. And then at the bottom of the chat, you can hit to all panelists and attendees and just type in your question there. And actually, Rudy, I've got a couple others, and I'll wait till some folks are typing in some other questions.
Okay.
So are any of these practices covered under the Conservation Stewardship program under NRCS and or their EQIP program?
They would definitely be covered in a combination of both.
Oh.
Because we cover grazing management, nutrient management, irrigation management, and we cover basically the majority of this stuff that I covered. We plan, and a lot of it is cost share. I couldn't tell you what Arizona does because states have their uniqueness on what they promote and stuff. But the conservation district or the gentleman from NRCS that spoke a while, he would be more qualified to tell you what they cost share.
That's true. Scott, I don't know if you want, Scott, you're still on. I don't know if you even want to chime in. Did you hear my question? Scott? Now we'll come back to him. Maybe let's see. Hold on. Scott? Scott, you there? Okay, I think he stepped away for just a moment. We're hearing his dog barking. That's cute. Okay, Rudy, and I'll come back. I'll get Scott back on and we'll bring that question up to him. So, okay, so you're saying, so the next step for producers, if they want to pursue something like this, oh, Scott says he's muted. So the next step for producers, you said, is going to their local district conservationist with NRCS to try to get a soil health assessment. Yeah.
Yep. You know, NRCS, that is one of the things that we are being tasked with, and that was the reason for the establishment of the soil health division that I've been with for over 4 years, was to give this training, which we've given them in most states, but the goal was to pass this on to our local state folks. And you saw where I mentioned that we have the in-field soil health assessment where you actually fill out that chart.
Yeah.
It was given. Okay, so what's needed first and foremost, and I don't know if all of your NRCS folks here have already been trained or able to do it, but you really can make headway in this way until you learn how to use in-field soil health assessment as part of your 9 steps of NRCS conservation planning. You got to start first with understanding what your resource base is and relating that to what kind of practices it takes to build on it. So a lot of this starts, first of all, with an understanding of how to apply this stuff in the field.
Okay. 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 So I'm just going through my list of questions. And again, if anyone wants to ask some more, point your arrow with your mouse down to the bottom of the screen, pull up that black menu and hit that chat button and hit it to, there's a 2 in the chat box, and you could do to panelists and attendees. So go ahead and do that. And I've got a couple more questions for you, Rudy. So what I'm interested in, so I saw the slide about Alejandro Carrillo in Chihuahua, Mexico. And I actually watched one of his YouTube videos, and I know he has like 600 herd of cow. He lives in an area that gets very, very little precipitation, and he doesn't supplemental feed. So yeah, I'm really interested. You call it the advanced rotational grazing. Can you go into a little more details? Like, I'm just trying to get a visual. I know it's the aggressive grazing, but just a little more details on all of that.
Right. This is based on the concept that you never graze and remove no more than 30-40% of your pasture. So in other words, they go in there and they graze, and they're there in a high stock density. They're packed together real tightly, and they're allowed to graze for a short time, and they remove from one field to the next, so they never over trample or overgraze, and that's the whole thing behind that. And there's a lot of excellent videos. There's not only his videos, but this is where I think you'll get the majority of clarity on how to use it. Is that my friend Dr. Alan Williams? If you just type in Dr. Alan Williams, he has YouTubes that describe this adaptive grazing in every detail, and that's where I would begin for your folks. They need to become well versed on the art and the science of this adaptive grazing management that is the most effective in restoring pastures and stuff.
Thank you. And do you, thank you. So we'll look for YouTube videos of Dr. Alan Williams about the advanced rotational grazing.
Yes.
And do you happen to even know how long it took Alejandro Carrillo to get his ranch into the condition for that picture with all that grass? I mean, do you know? Yeah, how long it took?
I don't have the exact date and time, but I can send you his email and contact him. Very, very nice guy. It's best that he tell you the time frame on it. But so most importantly, what he'll tell you is that it was that intense detail of understanding your landscapes, your precipitation, the time of the year, the type of soils. So viewing his information and Dr. Alan Williams and all that will give you the level of understanding that you need. But I would rather Alejandro personally by email or by phone tell you how he went about it, because his conditions are very similar to your area.
Yeah, they are. Thank you.
Sure.
I also got another comment from Neil. Greg Judy on YouTube is a great source for intense grazing too. So thank you, Neil. Have you watched any of those, Rudy? Greg Judy?
Yeah, I know Greg Judy. He's a well-known and a master at bale grazing and many things, stockpiling and all that. These sources are really, this is where your folks really want to, he's another excellent resources, Greg Judy on this. They're outstanding practitioners in this area.
Okay, thank you. Can you, I just got a few questions, and again, if you all have questions, feel free to chime in with that chat box, hitting that menu at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so Rudy, can you explain this no-till versus conventional just a little bit more? Just give a few details on it.
It has to do with the no-till. Basically is there's different types of no-till drills, and again, there's good YouTubes on that, but no-till basically has the least disturbance in planting a seed. It just cuts right through the residue and it plants a seed at a certain depth. And it's not the same thing as you going out into a field and more plowing it, ripping it, disking it, furrowing up the rows and using cultivators and all that. All it is that it is your goal in soil health is to disturb the soil the least amount as possible, because the aggressive tillage destroys the habitat and oxidizes and burns off the carbon and the nutrients very quickly, because of it's very hostile to the soil biology. It's just a matter of degree of how much you're disturbing the soil.
Thank you, thank you. And can farmers, if they start to implement all these different cover crops you talk about, warm season, cool season, and have all that the great deal of vegetation you're talking about, can they still use mechanized kind of tools to harvest crops, or how does that work?
Yeah, you can. I would recommend folks see a person that does, several people that do this extremely well. I had mentioned to you that my friend Brandon Rocky in Center, Arizona. Mm-hmm. Okay, he has YouTubes, and we recently released a video, and you can request that from Brandon Smith on his operation, and he covers all those details. So he grows potatoes, as I showed in the slide, in rotation with cover crops, pollinators, and grazing. But when they harvest the potato, it has disturbance in the soil. And so it's a combination of using the soil health system, in addition that he still has to harvest the potatoes. And I would recommend highly that you have your folks view the videos that we did with Brandon Rocky this last fall. And the Soil Health Division has access to that. And that'll show you how he integrates his operation using soil health principles in his harvesting equipment. The other example that you really want to look at, and he's been at this for a long time, is my friend Dr. Jeff Mitchell from the UC Davis in California. He has a lot of work on for the very similar crops that you grow in Yuma and elsewhere, on his research of integrating the equipment, the soil health principles, the cover crops. So you and I have talked in the past, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You already have people that have a lot of experience and they're well respected in this field. So that's where I would begin in answering that question. Get well versed from folks that are already doing it.
Thank you. Couple more questions. Again, if anyone has one, feel free to chime in on the chat box. down below, if you put your screen at the bottom of the, or if you put your arrow at the bottom of the screen with your mouse, that black menu pulls up. You can hit that. Okay, couple more I have. Hopefully I'm asking a lot of things that some producers might ask too, but so is there, Rudy, is there some tool that the landowners can use to test their soil health? I mean, I saw what you were talking about in terms of putting some of the soil, letting it dry, putting it in the drainer, you know, having a water bottle with holes in it, you know, poured slowly over it and test that way. Is that like the best way, or what would you suggest they do? What's the
what I covered was those assessments that I did are the most effective, because you have to do them on, it involves the farmer, it involves easy to use techniques, and there's really no shortcut. When you're doing this in-field assessment and diagnostics, you don't really want to take any shortcuts. You want to get enough information to be well informed, and I don't know of any other way that I would use and have been using for years that would replace the field common sense approach of doing this stuff.
Okay, and so again, you should probably contact NRCS and at least get their help in doing all of this.
And if they don't have that going, schedule some kind of joint trainings to get this stuff so that the farmer can do a lot of this himself. All the farmers that I work with and many others, they're all very comfortable with going out with a shovel and looking at earthworms, looking at, you know, biology, looking at measuring temperature, PSI. So they'll after doing it with a little bit of practice, they'll say, you know what, it really wasn't that hard. I've never really done this before and never really looked what it was under the soil. But so none of the stuff that I covered is anything that is advanced at all. It's something that anyone can do.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one more question. So if anybody else has a question, again, type it in the chat. So what, I know you said you worked with, and you had a picture of it, the farmer in Yuma, the no-till farmer. What was well, generally speaking, what is the most common problem you encounter with soil health issues, like in the different areas, like for instance, Yuma? What?
But the biggest thing is that their current cropping systems, they've already mastered at them. They've mastered the way they use their planting, their seeds, their fertilizers, their tillage, and all that. And so they grow a crop there on it. But a lot of that, their way of doing it does not build well aggregated soils and what have you, because it would require you to adjust your system to integrate the kind of practices that we talked about. So what I've seen here for many years is that the first issue that you want to overcome when adapting soil health is you got to understand what it is, how to assess it, and how to begin demonstrating this on a small piece of land till you figure out how it works. So it's what I refer to as a soil health journey. There's no shortcuts. There's a significant learning curve, and you got to really believe and understand that these ecological principles work, and you got to see these producers that we talked about that have made it work. And like for anybody that I've worked with, and I worked with a lot of folks, you got to begin your own soil health journey to begin putting the pieces, resources, connections, demonstrations, extension, researchers, and others, and that's where you start. You know, it's going to be something that takes commitment.
Okay, thank you, Rudy. And same question. What would the most? Cause I know you also had a slide for Florence. So what do you think is the most common soil health issue there?
Is that for me?
Yeah, Rudy. Yeah.
So the question was, what was the most common situation in the Florence, Arizona area?
Yeah, soil health issue. Like, what did you think was the most common, or what were you? If you don't know that, what were you dealing with you were working with a Florence farmer out there?
Oh, this would be a problem. This would be a situation you would encounter everywhere. Is okay. That the main issue that you would find is very poorly functioning soils because of compaction, low infiltration rates, high temperatures. You would find soils that are not performing to their optimum, because that's what happens when soil health principles are not in place. They're not going to perform to their best potential.
Okay.
But you would find that anyway.
Okay, thank you. Well, does anyone, we've got, you know, a couple more minutes. We're running ahead of schedule here. Does anyone else have a question? If so, type it in chat. I don't see that anyone else is typing any other questions in. Well, and feel free to do it while I'm talking in the next few minutes if you're just trying to find the chat button right now. So feel free to type it in while I'm talking. So I just wanted to say, so again, Sharma Torrens, I'm the Conservation Education Director with the Arizona Association of Conservation Districts. And I would like to say, one, thank you to all the attendees. I apologize that we were having such issues, but I guess kind of that's what we're gonna have to deal with is we're slaves to technology. You know, if our computers die, if our internet goes out, we're not gonna be able to communicate like this so well. But so thank you for sticking around for that. Thank you so much to the San Pedro Nrc D, to Sharon Reed, to Bonnie Wilson, for being such a great partner and helping us to put on this workshop. Better way to word that. And then also thank you so much to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Natural Resource Conservation Service, Nrcs, which we've been talking about quite a bit. Thank you so much to them being for such a great partner and also helping with this workshop. And to all you attendees, again, thank you so much. I wanted to say a couple things. I'm gonna give my email address again in case those of you that didn't see the PowerPoint. My email address is Sharma, S-H-A-R-M-A, period, Torrens, T-O-R-R-E-N-S, so Sharma, period, Torrens, at aacd1944.com. So if you need to reach me, if you have any questions for Rudy, but I wanted to, thanks to our partners. Thank you to our speakers. Thanks so much, Scott Stratten, the Wilcox office, Nrcs. He's the acting DC over there. Thank you so much, Rudy Garcia. And again, we were lucky to get him right before he retires. His last day with Nrcs is on Friday. So thank you so much. But yeah, I gave my email address. If you have any questions, reach out to me that way. We'll stay in touch with Rudy after he retires because I know he's going to stay involved in all the soil health stuff. So that's going to be great. I also wanted to tell you that I hopefully have all your email addresses because I'm going to email you a Conservation Stewardship Program survey. Please fill that out. I'm going to send it in Word so you can just fill it out quickly, mark an X next to whatever you would select and email it back to me. And then also I wanted to mention the Conservation Stewardship Program. The deadline is June 1st. And again, it's public lands are eligible. If you have effective control of the land, you're lessee eligible. So they are making it so the West, us out here in the West can apply. So I would encourage you to do so. And if you'd like to, you know, apply for the Conservation Stewardship Program, please contact me or your local district conservationist with the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And yeah, I'm gonna also give you my phone number in case those of you that didn't see the PowerPoint as well. So if you'd like to call me instead of email me, it is 602-540-5331. That is my cell phone, 602-540-5331. Feel free to call me. Love to hear from you. And yeah, thank you so much again. This is recorded. We are going to put it on the AACD website. We are going to make it available in the future for those of you that were unable to attend. And thank you so much. And we so appreciate you taking this time for us today. Couple more quick things. We are going to have a water workshop on May 18th at 3 p.m. So it's going to be kind of what you saw today, but instead of soil health, we are going to be talking about water, the adjudication, the water rights. So that's a good one. On May 19th, we are also having another one about Farm Bill updates and hearing more from the Natural Resource Conservation Service on things like that. So I will keep you all posted. I think I have everyone's email. And thank you so much. Have a great day. I hope everyone's safe and healthy and remains that way. And thank you so much. Have a good one.